All right, we're live. I had to intro it with the song.
Oh, that's the new intro. Okay.
I just had to do something. I couldn't think of anything else. I was gonna do the whole intro in German, but then I figured that would kind of ruin it for anybody coming at it cold. So I had to do something fun.
That was good.
Yeah. So we are live for another weekend stream. Just hanging out. Let us know. Yeah, is Metal gonna sing?
Oh God.
Let us know how the audio levels are, because we haven't tested. We haven't really checked that fully yet. But on my end, it looks fine. So, is that what they call serious audiophile music?
I think so.
So I figured, yeah, what we do in this live stream is I don't know if Metal wants to talk about a particular headphone, but I figured if so, we can just we can do that.
I've been teasing this for a while, but
yeah,
it is here, and
okay, there we go.
my take on it is probably going to be somewhat divisive.
That's okay. Okay, let's just go for it.
Which actually makes it more interesting than not, most likely.
Yeah.
Why am I huge?
This is a question that I ask myself all the time. All right.
That was unexpected. Anyway, so really miniature LCD5 review so that people can get to it without waiting an hour for us to discuss everything else except for it.
Yeah.
The bass is really, really good. Like really, really good. Like as in it responds to music very quickly, as you would probably expect from something that would succeed the LCD4. I don't have an LCD4 on hand, especially not Flux's LCD4, which would be the representative ideal LCD4. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was slightly behind, like Andrew has already said, in Slam. But it's feels like it's so close that it probably doesn't matter, which is really amazing considering how much lighter they were able to make it while still maintaining that. Because a lot of the Slam, Audeze has told me, comes from the magnetic flux of the magnets, and so clearly, they've had to shed weight somehow, and the magnets has got to be one part of it. I don't know what kind of space age magnets we got going on in this thing, but well, they're doing something with the bass. That's good. I'll skip the mids. Let's go to the let's go to the treble. I would save the best. No, not the best for last with the mids, but the treble on my unit is really, really nice. It's definitely warm. Like, even for me, I can tell that it's probably going to be too warm for some people, but there's no, like, peaks anywhere, which is actually different than, I think, Andrew's unit and Crin's unit. Because, actually, I'm sorry, my unit's probably more like Crin's measurements, it seems like, where there's no, like, peak around 5 or 5.5K, something like that. So I seem to be not the odd one out, but Andrew might be the odd one out and having some peak there right after the upper mids, which is really strange and also disappointing, considering that, for this price, you would have thought that Audeze had figured out their audio control by now, but that seems to be what we can tell from the measurements so far. I'm going to try to send this to Andrew. We'll see if Audeze will let me, so that we can get his take on the exact same unit that I'm talking about here. And then there's the mid-range, and so yes, it's really shouty, even for me. I mean, really, for me, means like 3 dB or 4 dB too much upper mids for my taste, because, we're sticklers here about our FR preferences, but there's a little bit more of a problem with my unit. It's that when you EQ it down to bring the upper mids down to like where I would boost them on previous LCDs, it sounds like it tries to maintain the amount of upper mid shoutiness, which is really unfortunate, because this headphone comes so close to being like, yeah, I would actually buy it, but that kills it for me. Like, it just doesn't EQ that well on the upper mids. I don't know why. It sounds like there's like a resonance problem in there, like it's detailed, it just doesn't EQ that well. You can't really dip the mids as much as I would like. And maybe it's just this unit. I have no idea. I'm hoping it is, but
Didn't you
that's
say
been
it
my
was
experience.
your LCD2F EQ'd better?
Yeah, definitely. Like, but I'm boosting that too, which is a little different of a situation. But it almost seems like they inserted a resonance or something to bring the upper mids up even more, or something like that. I don't know, because I know they used cats and at least one or two other mastering
That's
engineers.
Bobcats, not
Yeah, bobcats for those
not
who
the
are
animal.
not familiar. To tune the thing. Oh yeah, wow! I just realized how strange that would be. They used cats to tune the headphone. Well, then it would be all treble because they love that.
Yeah.
No, yeah, bobcats help tune it to sound as speaker-like as possible. And what ended up becoming is something that's, I think, a little bit more like Mueller DF. I definitely pronouncing that wrong, and Mataconums will get mad at me, but it sounds closer to old school diffuse fields in some ways. I don't think it's nearly as shouty as original diffuse field would say, and I think that the bass is actually too high shelved up. If you look at the DF curve, it's really low bass. Then it comes to a sharp mid peak, and then it kind of dies out. But it's still closer to that than anything they've made. So
Yeah, I was gonna say
pretty interesting.
I think Muller DF is a little more counterclockwise. Like
It's yeah, it's like the same curve tilted just a little bit, but it's still too much upper mids for
yeah,
people who are used to the old ones, the old tuning. So, but
yeah.
yeah, I wish it EQ'd down better, which was really surprising. I thought that was gonna work. And of course, the number one thing everyone's gonna say, "Yep, my source is holding me back." I know I am using an Atom for this. Whatever. You can believe whatever you want to believe. I even plugged it into, are you ready for this? An Apple dongle. And actually, it ran great. I was so shocked. And that's the other thing. This thing is really efficient for being what it is. I mean, obviously, you can't push current properly into something like that with a tiny Apple dongle. But I was I was very surprised how loud they were able to get with something like that, which is really quite something. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it could be my source holding me back. I have no idea. But the upper mid problem was actually almost exactly the same. It was a little less bad on the Atom, but it still didn't EQ very well. So it was pretty weird. But anyway, so close. So close.
um, what's your take on the like soundstage?
The soundstage,
Yeah.
yeah, all right. I talked for too long, so I was gonna take a break there.
No,
The
no, this
sound,
is
but the stage is like so I didn't test the stage in a lot of detail, but one thing that I noticed immediately, like, because I haven't been listening to them like all day every day. I don't know. I just don't listen to high-end headphones as much as I used to. But my initial take was, wow, the imaging is like so specific about them, like more so than I think a lot of the other models, which obviously is very. And it seemed like, I don't know if you got this sense, but it seemed like the imaging was really fair. Like it wasn't like
Mm,
trying to. It's not like the HT100, that's for sure, where everything is like spread out, which is a really nice grand kind of thing. But this is like a. It definitely lends itself well, I feel like, to a studio in terms of the soundstage. It's a studio-ish soundstage. There's another
mhm.
term that Olive will not like. Um,
We need to
so,
do that tier
oh,
list.
someone said, yeah. Oh my God.
That's happening. I'm doing it.
Oh my God. Yeah, for those who missed it on Twitter, I suggested very very poorly that there should be a tier list for audiophile adjectives, and apparently that's happening now in a video from Andrew.
Yep.
What is the headphone? It's an Audeze LCD5.
I see somebody asking how's the dynamics. I think you addressed that.
Yeah, I talked about the bass at the very beginning. I think it's very good. Like it's very I think like what I notice about the bass now, I have a different way of describing how an expensive headphone handles bass, and it's something like it tracks the like nuances of the track better. Like you can hear it respond when they're supposed to be a transient, and it immediately goes back to rest and is able to like keep up with whatever's happening, whereas all those little details of the bass volume get kind of smushed together into like a, it's almost like a curve that's like sharper like this versus
Hmm.
like a kind of like lumpier at going through time. Like, oh my God, it
I,
makes
I
no sense, but
I get what you're
I
saying
know,
though.
I think I know you're you know what I'm talking about.
It's like
So
if IR is actually a thing.
yeah, that would that would feel like I'm trying to describe.
Well, I
that,
guess it is a thing, but if it meant something, which is
Yeah,
why,
it's
you know,
I know, which it's funny because Odyssey says the same thing. Like, and from a logical standpoint, it makes some sense. Like, you have a really heavy material, like you take a Ford F-150 and you accelerate it, and it takes a while to get going, and then it's really hard to stop. And then you take like a McLaren F1 and you accelerate, it goes really quickly, and then it can stop really quickly because it's because of the weight. So the lower mass should be, tracking more quickly. But at the same time, Oratori's going to yell at me because honestly, what is speed? Speed is just like how quickly something can vibrate, actually. And if you can already vibrate at 20K successfully, then there shouldn't be a problem with speed on any headphone ever made, unless you're using like literally a thick piece of paper as a driver or something.
but it's not vibrating more, as Sennheiser would say, not more, better.
Yeah. Wait, when did they say that?
No, it's in the some of their marketing material that nobody
Oh.
seemed to watch. It was
Oh,
hilarious.
really?
Yeah, they did that video where they were like, bass, not more.
Oh,
Better.
oh, that one with the giant
Yeah,
ear.
yeah.
That
Yeah, I think it was their Urbanite series.
the
that they were-
Urbanite is wow.
Yeah.
They really tried to take a shot at beats there, and even in marketing,
Yeah.
which is just wild. But anyway,
Um,
they look
I,
larger than I thought. Well, they are actually a smaller cup. My 2F is unfortunately. Actually, where did it go? Did I lose it? No,
you
it's
lose
sitting.
it.
It's sitting on the shelf back there. But it is a smaller cup. But it's not a small headphone by any means. So
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, Jason. We'll get to that super chat in a second, but I wanted to ask
oh
first.
yeah, wow. I saw that.
What are your thoughts on the ergonomics and comfort? And there's a lot of questions about like clamp and stuff like that.
I asked them which headband this is, and I guess they didn't get around to the response. But
It's not the one
what
they sent you on itself.
what? Oh yeah, that's the other part. I asked for an LCD5, and then it arrived, but the headband and nothing else. There was no headphone. Like, that was the first box that arrived. I was like, what's
Audeze's
going on?
trolling you.
And then I looked. I know. I was like, this has got to be some kind of joke. And then I looked at the package tracking, and I didn't notice until it arrived that it said 1 pound, and I was like, wow, okay, that's clearly not the headphone. So they finally sent the actual headphone. I don't know which headband this has on it, but actually it wasn't clampy at all for me. So I'm inclined to guess that. Well, I mean, if you just hold it like this, you can see the cups don't even come together. So maybe this is maybe this is different than yours. But I'm inclined to think that this is probably equipped with the big head version. If they must be producing it. Why would they send me just a headband if it wasn't like the updated one? Probably. So maybe it's the new one.
Yeah.
Oh, someone says they got the less clamp headband, so it looks like they are making it now. But yeah, it definitely was no issue with that. But I can imagine, because if you look at the pads, they're totally different now. They've got this like sloping inward. So like if this was a high clamp, this could compress really easily, and you could have an issue there. So
Yeah, so that was actually something that I noticed with it as well, which is with the when I was doing the measurements, where the resonance frequency is I can't remember exactly what it is, but I actually think it's above 100 hertz, meaning that like which kind of surprised me because the bass was so good, and I was thinking, okay, I guess it's like
that is
partially
strange.
because of the coupling, that you're getting that
Oh.
good bass extension. And for me, that's why I was thinking, yeah, I mean, I would probably need the big boy headband, because big head and everything. But then I would worry that like maybe that wouldn't seal as the same way that the regular one does.
Oh, I don't think it's gonna be a
But
problem.
You didn't have
I
any
think
issues.
no problem with the bass or anything. Bass is like the strongest part of this, and if it didn't seal, I probably would have known, because I mean, if you don't seal an Audeze, it's like really pretty obvious, I think. Although on a measurement head, may be a lot more sensitive at the very low frequencies. Yeah, you're right. Hey, even more reason to send this up to see if it really. We'll use
Well,
Andrew
right.
to tell if it has the right headband.
Yeah,
Because you already have one to compare to.
Yeah.
So
I briefly want to get to the super chat, and then we can talk more about
yeah,
that.
oh yeah, do that.
So Jason asks, what are your thoughts on the Sony IER Z1R? Is it really the best IEM for bass? What are some competitors for bass response? So My answer there is it's one of the best. I have heard it. I haven't heard it, for an extended period of time. I heard it very briefly at a meetup, like I want to say a couple of years ago, and it is very, very good for the bass. But is it the best for the bass? I think what you would want to look at is, anybody who's looking into getting high-end IEMs, it's worth considering the U12T, because that is just like on everybody's list. It's the GOAT IEM, and while it doesn't have the same bass as the Z1R, it's got probably the best multi-BA bass. Other than that, yeah, I think it's a question of what bass level you want, because there's other stuff out there that has, there's like the Legend X, which is like ridiculous bass, so if you want more bass, then yeah, the Legend X. But if you want, and it also has really, like, it's very technically impressive. See, now my camera's screwing up again. It's doing weird shit. I hate it. It's not my camera, it's the stupid USB thing. I did order a new camera,
wow.
so we will no longer be on Fuji soon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's bold.
It is bold, yeah. Anyways, back to the LCD5. So I had some thoughts, and you and I've talked about it a little bit, but it's funny because I think that actually more people are getting the one that Kryn and you have. I think that seems to be more representative. The one thing, though, is that I actually did like a comparison between the measurements that I took with our unit and Jude's. Of course, Jude was doing it on the. There's so many confounding variables there because he did it in the 512.
Oh, he has a 5120.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no,
so we were like, well, we can't totally compare, but he had a reference to a Sennheiser HD650 with fresh pads,
right?
So, I believe. So we did a reference.
Less 5K there, right?
Yeah. So we did a reference on the Gross between the LCD5 and the HD650 as well, and we found that actually the delta between the two. So, and then that was the way that we could compare the two, right? Because we just looked at the delta for both, and we found that it actually matched. Like the measurement that we got for the LCD5 matched Jude's, based on the delta between the two headphones.
Okay.
So at the very least, Jude's and ours is pretty similar, but then those were also, I think, before people were like customers were getting them, like people who were just buying them, because. Yeah, maybe they came from a different place.
Might have had a pre-prod along with Jude, and then this is more like a production one, because I got it much later.
But I will say that I actually think that the default tuning of yours, the one you have and the one Kryn has, is better than the one that we have.
Doesn't it fill in like the 8K-ish area better?
Or it's 7K.
And no and less 5, yeah, something like that. And then 5K is not boosted anymore. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, like the overall treble sounds actually probably warmer than the 650 with new pads, honestly.
Yep.
But it definitely doesn't have, like, it took me years to realize this because I used the 650 as like a reference for everything, but the 650 and 600 have, like, actually more so the 650 have like a pretty significant peak around 5K, 5.5K. Yep. It's not something that's maybe it didn't used to, but at some point I think it started having one.
Yeah.
So that's what it sounds like now. And this doesn't have that. My unit doesn't have that, the LCD5. Yeah. And this is the 650, in case anybody is asking. I just felt like open back velour comfort today rather than the 770.
Yeah, not it's not a 6XX.
No, thankfully.
No, they feel different. They're made of different stuff. It feels like.
Yeah, I actually have both. I had both at the same time. I think Denfi actually sold me this because I just wanted a real 650 and unloaded the 6XX. But I mean, they were. There's been some controversy over the 6XX and 650 being the same headphone or not. Don't know why. I don't know why that's even a thing. Maybe it's just because of the pad revision that
it could
Drop
be
was using. Maybe
could be
I
pad
don't know.
Differences.
There's been at least 3 revisions now. There's like the original, then there was the second. What did they do with the second one? That was the one before the previous. I don't even know. But the newest one I think is clear plastic around the edges. That's one of the changes, and they made it. Okay. There was one before the 660S. That was when one of the revisions came out, where they made the foam less, didn't compress as much over time, I think. And then after that, they made another one where I guess they had to switch suppliers. Probably, I don't know why else they would have changed it. That now it has a clear.
And that was more recent.
Right. That was very recent. Yeah.
So the one that I have might be the one before the recent pad change, and I
Okay.
did measure a difference between the 650 and the 6XX, specifically in the treble.
Okay.
So you know how like on the like those measurements, like if anybody's doing measurements of that headphone,
It's almost like you got to swap the pads between the two, and then you have to like.
Yeah, you'd have to do that. I didn't have them side by side, right? I just had them one after the other, right? And there's that feature, that 5K feature, and if you don't get that 5K feature, then there's something different with the positioning going on that's not representative. So you have to try and find it, and then you get the rest of the upper treble as well, because otherwise it won't show that. But anyways, on both units, I was able to kind of achieve the right position there, and they showed a different result in the treble, and they both had fresh pads. So I don't know, but not a massive difference, like pretty close, just like different enough where I'd go, this one's 650, this is 6XX.
And apparently the new pads is another change. I don't usually like citing Solder Dude's measurements, but because the headphone is so similar and the pad dimensions are so similar, I think his flat plate might be okay, but he showed like about one or like at most maybe like 2 dB difference across the range. I think he showed like 1 dB less bass and like 1 dB more in some of the peaks in the treble. It's really similar. Like I wouldn't worry about second versus third pad revision. I'm sure there's probably like 3 more pad revisions that happened since the 90s that we don't know about either. So like who knows?
Fair enough.
All right, let me get to the chat here. Let's see.
I did actually want to also just bring up some stuff about the LC5 and the EQ.
Oh yeah, you wanted to respond to my allegation.
Yeah. No, I think it makes a certain amount of sense, because on our unit, Chrono and I both ended up EQing it to roughly the same result, and that would obviously be a different way of doing it than what you were trying to do. Right,
it really is like a meme. I didn't realize how much of a meme it was until you posted like, oh, here's what Metal's gonna do to it, and it's like a cut in the mids and a boost to the bass, and that's like literally every headphone for me is like a cut in the mids and then cuts at 6 and 10K and then a boost in the bass. Like,
so I think what you're saying about like the resisting EQ like at around 3K, that's I assume where you. Like in that like, upper mid.
I usually define the center of ear gain at 3.5K, but I moved it around a bit, and I think it was fine at 3.5K.
Yeah.
But instead of doing that, you guys are filling in the bass and the treble instead. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
that's
actually
probably
have not tried that yet, but I might have to try that and see if it makes any difference.
Yeah.
But I doubt it, because essentially, I mean, that would be like applying a giant shelf above what I want and a giant shelf below what I want to reduce, and that's literally the same filter, just pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think it's equalizer APO at all. I mean, I had plenty of headphones respond amazingly to cuts like electrostats, like the ESP95X, and you can kill the 1.5K thing like completely. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. So I don't even think it's that. Who knows? Maybe I really do need a real chain, not this junk Adam. But anyway, that's just my experience, and all the disclaimers there. So if you want to completely throw away what I said because I'm not using a $5,000 chain, that's totally fine. I'm not going to be mad at that. Yeah. But anyway.
I need to get back into source memeing.
Oh, God, here comes the dangerous music source.
Yeah.
Actually, that's probably too old. There's probably a new dangerous by now.
Yeah, I got to get Flux to send me something like that. Because, at the moment, I land on, like... Sure, there was probably a difference, but like, does it?
It's
matter?
Not as big as headphones.
Yeah,
it's not as big as someone asked on Reddit. I think I don't remember if it was today or yesterday, but I saw it was like, what's the biggest difference you've heard between like audio equipment or something like that? And I didn't respond, but I was thinking the first thing that came to mind was, well, it sure wasn't source equipment versus headphones. Like, yeah, you can, like, I have noticed the difference. One time I tried a Utopia over at my local dealer in person on, I think it was the Pro ICANN versus the Hugo 2. And I was like, there is something different about the treble that I liked on the chord better.
Yeah.
And I went back and I'm like, yeah, there is a difference. Like the Pro ICANN sound a little fuzzier for some reason, for lack of a better term.
Do you know what the
really
DAC was?
Top end.
For the
I think it was the stack of
the IDSD
Pro ICANN and the IDSD. Yeah. I don't know who was responsible, but I was comparing that stack to the tiny
Yeah.
Hugo too.
What I would
And I
wonder is
like
if
the
you
chord better.
ran the chord as the DAC to the Pro ICANN.
Oh, I didn't try that. I
It'd be
probably should have.
interesting.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, you can notice it. But first of all, I think the headphone has to have resolution, whatever that is, which makes it more easy, possibly.
Hmm.
Although some people will claim that the 650 will scale to the end of time, which I
580.
don't really agree with. I guess 580 more so just because it's older.
Yeah.
That's what I'm convinced the reason is now.
Yeah.
Although I think the 580 is really interesting because if you get the right revision, I have a theory that the black driver, the felt around the driver, if you get the one with the dark one versus
Hmm.
the one that they make now, which is like silverish, um, that one seems to have the characteristic, and the old 580s all have the darker damping felt, I think. That has the characteristic where it's not as shouty, but it also has better bass extension at the
Mm.
same time. So like I think that's what like I think Max's 580 might be that way. It's really good.
Not as
But
shouty
anyway,
would be nice on that one.
yeah, the 580s that are like the 600 or the last 600 I bought out of curiosity was really shouty. It was like, wow, I don't remember this.
Yeah.
But same time, I had a 650 for so long. But then the 650 trades a shout for like the 5.5K thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm starting to wonder. But I think the early 650s also had the black felt damping, and they were really warm. That's I think where they get the reputation for being really veiled. And then when they switched to the silver, it kind of brought the treble and probably also the 5.5K. I don't even know. There's just so many revisions.
Yeah.
It's really underrated. I was telling Andrew, I think the other day, it's like it's really underrated how severe unit variation and like stealth revisions are in this hobby. It's really crazy.
Got another
So
one for
much.
you. The Vocal Utopia. But it might just be the pads.
Really?
The early Utopias had that, and you can see it in Crin's measurement. There's that peak in the treble. I've now measured 3 Utopias, and
Don't they
none
have
of them
like
have that.
don't they have like 3 peaks?
Yeah, this is a series
They're
of
all
peaks,
like
but one of them
low.
is like significantly higher
Oh,
on
oh
Crin's.
man.
And I've measured 3, and none of them have it. They're all way more balanced, and they have more bass on mine too. So like there's that idea, the narrative around the Utopia that it's like bright. None of the ones that I've evaluated, they all measure honestly a little bit like lower than the target in the treble. So I
Oh
don't
my God.
I don't know
I
what's
know.
going on there.
Utopia is a really interesting headphone. It
Yeah.
feels like it has these really narrow, sharp peaks, but all of them are not really bright at the same time because they're all kind of low
Yeah.
in total energy. But there's these, so it's more like there's huge dips between them more so than their peaks, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
It's
Yeah.
it,
They're
it, it's cool, but yeah, I don't know. I don't find its resolution to be like that of the Sasfara and LC4 though
yeah,
at the
it's
same time. It
planars, I
feels,
think.
but
Are
it feels
just
like the best we can do maybe with the dynamic.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah,
Uh,
that's more for slam. Vocal's good for slam.
yeah, actually I'm really
Anyway,
I'm memeing right now with the
oh,
guilty
the
pleasure
Elysian.
setup right now, which is the Elir with Utopia pads, which
Oh, really?
fixes some
Oh,
of
that's
the
weird.
yeah, it fixes some of the issues there with the frequency response and that sort of strange treble. Which is
What
funny
about
because
what about the Utopia pads on a clear?
yeah, I haven't tried that. I should try that.
It
Yeah.
feels like that would be really good.
Yeah.
I think didn't Tal measure that? I thought he was playing
Maybe.
around with that. I forgot.
And then also running it off of the amps and sound Kenzie out of the 32 ohm out meaning that it's boosting the bass and down tilting the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
So it's a slammy
Oh,
boy
'cause
now.
damping factor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Impedance bump.
that's always
Um,
fun.
yeah, we should probably dive into the chat.
Yeah, sorry guys.
um, do you want to go? I saw a question here earlier on that was from Robin. He says, "Can you get a mini LCD5 with an EQ'd LCD X, or an
Ooh,
LCD 2C?" Well, I'm gonna say probably not the 2C, but I'll let Metal answer for the LCD X.
probably not the 2C. Well, the thing about the LCD5 is it's a great example also of a headphone where it's like the treble's like pretty warm, but you can tell that it's still got detail, but it's kind of hidden
Yeah,
because it's so warm in a way. Like I don't know, but the more you listen to it, the more it's like, oh yeah, it's there. Whereas the X is very good, but like it still doesn't sound. I don't know. There was something about it, like I said on one of the other streams, where it was kind of cold. I don't know. It just sounded kind of like cold sounding. It's very hard to describe, but its overall timbre was not quite the same. Even the LC2F sounded more like relaxing. I don't. It's horrible. I'm gonna get destroyed for saying these things. Timbre. That's bad.
Actually, I was going to ask about timbre on the LCD5 because that was one of the things I noticed as well.
I I don't know. I did. It doesn't
Plucked.
sound like to me the LCD5 doesn't sound like anything. Like it just sounds like
Oh,
whatever's
interesting.
being played through it, kinda. I guess
Huh.
more so than most headphones. I don't know. Did you notice it was really off or something?
No, no, I'm not off. Just like more noticeably tight, I guess, and
Oh,
fast. Like
yeah.
so
No, the
that
bass is definitely like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
and that's like for me, I was like, yeah, that it sounds like I'm not sure if you heard the original HE6 in recent times, um, but
The
going
last
back
time
to
I heard
that,
it was at Z's, I think.
okay,
It was still really good though,
but yeah, going
obviously.
back to that, and because that was sort of a reference while I was comparing them. I was just the HE6 is like a go-to reference headphone for me,
Yeah.
and it had there. It's funny because when I was comparing the HE6 SE V2 to the LCD X 2021, the HE6 SE V2 sounded faster in the bass. Like it sounded tighter and faster, but the LCD-X had much better soundstage and much
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
and it sounded like better like more I say clarity for trailing ends of tones, but like
Yeah.
more resolving in that sense. So for me, the LCD5 took on some of that HE6 speed characteristic that again I think it must have something to do with flux
I think it's a combination of
flux
really
density
strong
magnets.
magnets and
Yeah,
really light diaphragm. That seems to be
something like that. Yeah,
what happens. I don't know. Did I buy
yeah.
the LCD5 yet? No. I explained that it was just enough of a deal breaker in the on the upper mids. They don't EQ. Like my LCD2, they don't even EQ for some reason on this unit. That no. I think somebody else said that I'm gonna get some special price or whatever. Like you guys are aware that I have made purchases, and maybe you're not, that are, with a discount. That's like the only thing I will stoop to.
Stooped.
Is reviewer discounts for buying certain headphones. I mean, it's not that they're cheap; it's still quite a bit of money. It's not like but I will not take things for free and keep them unless I
Yeah,
say that I'm doing that.
you
Actually,
make a
somebody asked about but definitely I'm not going to keep like an LCD5 for free. Oh my God,
you make a
that would
point
be
about
really
sending
bad.
stuff back.
I really try to send stuff back,
Yeah,
especially now, because I know, like, quote unquote, my fans are super picky about that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Like, they're really against. I feel like you probably have similar fans because we're kind of targeting the same really high enthusiast space of like the most anti-affiliate link group of people
Yeah,
ever. So like, it's even better when we can test stuff and be sure that we just send it back and don't take stuff for free. I don't take high dollar stuff for free, that's for sure.
yeah.
There is something I did take for free, and someone was asking about this. This is the Dunu Titan S. This is a pre-production unit. Oh, I don't have the focus going right now, but um,
It's good enough.
this is a really interesting IEM, and again, I did keep this for free, but it's like $80. So
Is it a
I hope I'm
Moondrop Aria killer?
That's what I'm thinking it might be, and maybe, only for the reason that it's not going to have bubbling paint because it doesn't have any paint. Honestly, that may be enough to have people try it. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised. It sounds really similar to like the Starfield. I don't have the Aria on hand, but it's supposed to be very similar to the Starfield.
Mm.
But anyway, it has more slam in the bass, very very similar frequency response,
Mm.
and so the upper mids are still a little bit shouty, but it's so similar otherwise, except it has a little bit better dynamics, and it's not going to have paint problems because it doesn't have any paint problems to have issues with, and it's got 2-pin removable.
Right.
So if you hate MMCX, you got that. So yeah, Titan S is there's a reason I retweeted that and said you should pay attention to this. This is really interesting. I don't think Dunu ever offered something at that price point before, which is doubly interesting.
Yeah.
It's
If
always gone out for the higher end.
in my view, if they the issues with like all those Moondrop dynamic driver IMs, apart from the soundstage, if for me at least, is the treble is a little uneven somewhere. Like sounds like
Is there a
there's
huge
something.
dip somewhere in the
Yeah,
sibilance and then it comes back up in the upper treble
yeah,
maybe?
yeah,
I think
something
this
like
is a
that.
little bit more even, although there's definitely still some upper trebleness to it.
Okay.
But I don't think it's nearly as sheeny as the star
Sheeny.
field. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
think I
it's like
noticed that too.
listening to stuff with symbols, and then the symbols sort of fall apart because there's something
Oh
not
yeah,
quite,
the fundamentals of the symbols
Yeah, yeah,
are reduced. Yeah,
yeah.
the sh versus s kind of.
Yep,
I think that's how Tile
exactly.
even used to describe it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
pretty important. Is the
Um,
LCD4 confirmed to be discontinued? No, and I don't know why they don't update their website, but they've said on HeadFi a couple of times now that they're just waiting on parts because wood is really hard to get. Oh no, we're gonna launch into another rant for a second. Hold on. Um, why don't we just make a magnesium chassis LCD4 instead of just making the LCD4Z all day? Why can't we just do that? Is
yeah,
magnesium equally hard to get as wood? Maybe it is. I don't know, but come on.
could be a cost issue. I'm not sure, but you'd have to imagine that wood
A
would cost
cost
more.
issue? The LCD4Z costs the same amount. It sounds worse. I'm sorry.
I haven't tried it. I think we have an MX4 in the office. I'll have to.
It's
I think
very
that's even
similar,
different as
very
well.
similar tuning, but
Hmm.
they gave up whatever detail is. That's a really good headphone as an example. If we could get a magnesium full LCD4
Yeah.
and put that on people's heads right next to the 4Z, because they're literally identical except for the trace pattern, I believe.
Right.
Everything about them, the film thickness and the magnets and everything is exactly the same except for the trace pattern. It gets it down to like 15 ohms or something really low on the 4Z. So, but yeah, it definitely affects the whatever timbre and detail are enough to be like, I don't want to do this unless I really need the efficiency.
Yeah. See, I want
Anyway,
them to do the parallel uniforce on all of their models. Not maybe not all, because it's probably it probably
I gotta
costs a lot for
try
the
the
driver. But
LCD-R somehow because that would be
I've
awesome.
tried one. I
I,
have one in the office right now.
except the oh man, the requirement for that amp is really weird though to use just
It
that.
feels like it's being held back by the amp. That's what it sounds like. I mean, it sounds like there's potential for something, but with that amp, it just doesn't do it for me. But then again, it's like it's nowhere near as expensive as like the LCD5, or it's only like what, around 2 grand or something like that. It's
The LCD-R, yeah, I think it was something like that.
Yeah, and it was a limited run, so I'm not sure. But the
I think
parallel
it was
uniforce
limited because
thing,
and I think they were skeptical about how they would be able to sell it with just that
yeah,
amp,
yeah.
which business decisions you got to think about
Yeah,
that.
I would love it if they made. I mean, it's a cool idea, right? But that's not. It's not technically like a ribbon, right? I think a lot of people were saying it was a ribbon, but it's
Yeah,
not.
no,
It's
it's
the
I
planer.
think it's just because of the trace pattern. It was
Yeah,
ribbon like, but it's really not.
yeah.
Like because of
Uh,
where the force is applied. The force is applied wherever the trace is painted, if you will, onto the diaphragm.
oh no,
And I
that's
think,
that's parallel uniforce. Yeah, same as the
yeah.
LCD5. Yeah,
So most planers, all right, now we're getting really technical. Most planers probably have like this zigzag pattern like this of the what is it called? Not the trace. What is that actually? The voice coil is actually
yep.
in this pattern. But I think what they're saying they did with the parallel is they actually have like they've got it going like this, and then it comes back around and it connects, and you've got these like
Hmm.
all these connections. So they're all in parallel. It's like a parallel circuit rather than a single circuit. And because that's how they're explaining it, at least I think. And because of that, like the overall impedance is very, very, very low.
Yeah.
And apparently there's some advantage of, I guess, doing the trace pattern that way.
Oh, it's
I
more
don't know.
pistonic. At least how I had it described to
Oh,
me was that
is that
it's
why?
more pistonic, uniform movement for the diaphragm, which is desirable. Well, so here's the thing: that's theoretically desirable,
Yeah.
but the problem is that there are counterexamples to that, like a lot of the Abyss stuff, where, or just like there's other examples that are, let's say, good examples for detail and stuff like that, or what we call resolution, that don't behave in a linear manner, or don't behave more pistonically. They behave significantly less like that. And so the question is, well, which one is what's the norm? What behavior is desirable, and what's the norm, and what's the exception? And I don't know the answer to that is.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Okay,
Um,
so Rob, wait, did Rob use the super chat to
he
ask a
did.
question?
He
Wow,
did, yeah.
very good.
Good job, Rob. Thank you. Any news
That
on the
helps.
Ferrum tube amps you tried at SoCal? So the Ferrum amp is not a tube amp. That's a solid state amp. It's sitting in my boss's office right now, and I have yet to steal it from him because I am still playing around with that Vioelectric HPA V550. I finally figured out why I was having, because like the issue that I had with the V550 or HPA V550, I almost said HPV.
Boy.
The power was always way too much, and so I had to mess with the dip switches on the back, and now I got it to be appropriate for normal headphones because I was like, I can't measure with this thing because it's just way too powerful. And so now I can. But then yeah, we also have the ABX box, so I'll be comparing the Ferrum ideally with some of the other stuff that's around that price, and seeing if it sounds any different. But as Metal said earlier, source differences are, as much as, yeah, sure, there's a difference there, that's a thing, they are insignificant when compared to differences among headphones, even differences among pads for the same headphones.
Yeah, it's a real pain.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to know what I think of the 1 Hertz timeless. I haven't heard of that one.
It's yeah, it must be a new one that they're coming out with.
I did a mini Twitter thread on that already. I think it's good. I don't know if I agree with Kryn putting it. What did he put it, like an A- or something? And like details, like, wait,
No,
really?
no, I would not.
I don't think it's quite that high. It's a great value, but it's not quite that high. And there's some issues where the bass bleeds into the upper bass a bit too much. There's a bit too much bass in general, unless you like bass a lot.
Yeah.
And then there's the usual issue, which I completely agree with Olive's gadgets on this. IEMs have a very common issue around 6K because that's your ear canal resonance, and most people is around there. That one's definitely got it somewhat badly. May or may not bother you, just like the Blessing 2 Dusk has that problem too. And so we were like, what peak?
Yep.
And it's like,
I had that
yeah,
problem.
it's there.
Yep.
And it shows up that actually seems to correlate, I think, with 8K on the coupler's resonance. The coupler's resonance is different than the what happens in your ear.
So
But
what you
that
saying?
seems to be like when there's an 8K peak, which there's supposed to be a little bit of one, but if it's like large, I think in my ear that on a sine sweep that usually correlates to the 6K thing.
So that's
going
interesting
on.
because yeah, on the Blessing 2, I also heard the 6K thing, but then, so what you're saying is that maybe the coupler resonance is obscuring a peak that actually is
I
there.
think the coupler resonance is might be related to just your ear resonance, except that where you experience the peak is lower down.
Is lower, yeah, maybe
in your own ear, due to the tips and the realistic ear canal.
insertion.
I don't know.
depth and all
This
that
is
stuff.
just a theory, but that seems to be. And on ratings, the same thing, except a 10K on the HMS. That happens
Right.
a lot. Like if you look at the Pixel Buds A on there, their frequency response is almost perfect up to the 10K, and that HMS almost always has some kind of 10K peak going on. But like if it's pretty large, that seems to mean there's a 6K problem, and I am hearing that on the Pixel Buds A. So I don't know. This is what I'm noticing.
Yeah. So he's I think he sent me his new Earphone Free Pro.
Oh, did he
2.
with the retuned thing?
Yeah, we're gonna do.
There's an app you can use
Yeah.
to tune it, but I don't think I'm allowed to give out the settings because he wants to pay a wallet.
Yeah, I'll work with him on getting because I think he wants to make it specific for each person. So
Yeah, he
try
has
and-
settings for first of all, you have to figure out it's pretty hard. This is why we need automatic, like the automatic sign sweep thing that JBL does on their Everest and whatever. We need that because most people are not going to take out a sign sweep and then be like, oh yeah, well, here's peak at this place,
Here's
and then
my
apply the
canal
EQ, and
resonance.
it's like that's just way too technical for most people. So, but if you can do that, then yeah, you can get some really interesting results having tailored EQs. EQs need to be tailored anyway to your ear. The more I do it, the more I realize that
Yeah.
my
Well, this is
settings
why
are
you
always going to be a
can't.
little bit different.
Yeah, and this is why you can't just like tune everything to the Harman target, because
Mm.
like if you made it perfectly match the Harman, it's the same reason why. I'm just thinking
Perfectly
like
matched to Harman inside your ear. I mean, you can't guarantee that.
well, that's the
just using
problem,
one
right?
setting, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And to me, it's the same reason why it's the smoothing or coarse grain versus fine grain stuff, right?
Yeah, definitely.
1/2 or 1/3 octave smoothed. So we don't even know. We would need a high res version of that to know, even with their testing, what the in-room target would have been.
I hope there is a high res version of that for the 5128 because that's got that narrow 8K thing.
Yeah, well,
we can guess, but Harman doesn't want to release their research anymore,
yeah,
so
exactly.
it's all up to you.
One of the things I'm yeah, right. We'll get there. We're working on it.
It's okay. We have Blaine, so
yeah. One of the things I also kind of worry about is that, like, with all the IEM stuff, we're getting a little off track here. I see some more comments about IEMs there, but like with all the IEM stuff out there with many different couplers, that starts to be that are also normalized in different. This is what I love about Crin's list, is that he's normalized for the coupler resonance. So there is things are consistent there, right? Whereas because there's so many different, like even comparing the 0045 Gross against the RIO 402, that difference alone is difficult for people to make sense of. So I worry that, like, because there's now so many folks with different couplers for IEMs, we're going to end up getting more confused consensus on things based on the difference in couplers. And then with over-ear headphones, we have actual Grosses versus the ass Grosses.
The more I look at RAWs, the more I think that they're just going to continue increasingly misleading without compensation of some kind.
Yeah,
like,
so
I'm starting to think, like, I told Jude, like, I think in a phone call once, like, if you're going to post RAWs, you've got to post like the 650 along with it. And it's funny because it looks like he started doing
he's doing it
after that point. And then now I'm starting to think, you really can't post RAWs at all. You should post like the compensated version along with the RAW with the 650 possibly to some kind of target that people are going to understand. So I don't care if it's Harman and if you agree with Harman or not. It's a reference and you can figure out sort of where you fall tonally. But because there's 5128 graphs floating around more and more now, and then there's 45 CA graphs floating around at the same time, it's like the RAWs are going to get increasingly hard to
well, theoretically, the 45 CAs and the 43 AGs are all using anthropometric pinna, which means they should align.
Those two should be equivalent.
But they sometimes don't in the bass, because the 45 CAs apparently they don't. It's more difficult to get a seal because you're limited. I couldn't remember
which one was. Yeah, okay. Well, I know one of them was harder to seal than the other. Yeah. Oh, because with the 43 AG you gotta like put it under your desk and whatever?
No, nobody does that ideally.
Oh, not anymore.
No, because the problem with that is you're not getting necessarily representative seal.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right? You could get too much if you do that.
How do you mount it? Yeah.
Yeah, so I mount it using some blocks that are like roughly the same size, and then I put something on the other side to make sure that it's actually like symmetrical as much as I can.
Like a realistic width, like a head width of a block. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Not quite as wide as mine, but
you can tell I clearly never used an actual piece of Gross equipment despite talking about it all the time.
But it's fascinating when you do start doing the measurements of that stuff.
You can really spin a narrative too if you want with measurements. It's kind of crazy. So
theoretically,
it's not only that you have to have a good rig, but now you have to trust the person taking the measurements. And there's somebody I won't name who we don't trust very much compared to.
Actually, you know what? I don't think that he's deliberately misleading.
I don't think so either.
No.
I just think that he releases stuff and then
he's
never
just doing it wrong.
Edits it.
Like, I don't think it's intentional.
All right. Anyway, we did like a whole section of ranting about that in like the last stream, so we need to do that again. We got some super chats now.
Yeah. But anyways, Danny, thank you. How does the Monarch Mark II compare to the Clairvoyance? By the way, that's an IEM that you should check out. I think it's a little too analytic for you, Metal, but it's
Monarch.
Monarch Mark
that is
II.
a little bit
Mark II.
Aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Monarch Mark II compared to Clairvoyance is an upgrade. The cable connection at the end of the Mark II, a mix of a mini XLR? Oh shit, the termination. Yeah, it is different. It is not mini XLR, I think, but it's like a weird 4-pin adapter thing. It's not like other cables.
I hadn't seen that. All
right.
No,
it's still a 2-pin, but it's not like the termination is different because they're doing their. I wish I had one here, but maybe I do actually. Oh wait, do I? I have the variations here, and that uses the same. Does it use the same thing? No, it does not. Damn it. Okay. Anyways, yeah. I don't think it's actually Mini XLR. I think it's something else, but I could be wrong about that. And is it an upgrade? I liked the Monarch Mark II better. It's more clear. The Clairvoyance is more just like good but bassy. And then Scott, measurements question. The Harman target was developed at 95 dB, if I recall. Would we expect that target to scale as a multiple or as an offset to other dB? I'm not sure what you mean by scale as a multiple or an
I guess
offset.
if you develop it at a listening volume of 110 dB, like some people, then would the target
Nobody, you
still
can't
be the
develop
same?
that target at 110 dB because nobody's going to want to listen that loud.
I know one person. Anyway,
Uh,
we can't avoid this.
yeah, showing measurements of distortion at 134 dB. It's like, why? Oh yeah, it's not doing so well here.
Audeze always takes pride though in,
Yeah.
in asking questions like that, because they're like, yeah, we can do like 140 dB. We wouldn't recommend it, but our drivers can survive over 5 watts.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, what? Apparently, I actually asked Shankar about that, and he said that, yeah, actually the only limitation really, like the excursion room that the planar driver that they have is so large that actually it's only heat that will kill them from the amount of current you run through it, which is like
Yeah.
unbelievable.
That's what Klaus Heinz said from Head Audio as well.
Oh, they have the same thing with their
He said the only thing
their
that you got to
AMT.
watch out is that you will fuse the heat will
Yeah.
cause things to fuse together.
You'll melt the voice
Yeah,
coil before you damage the film. That's unbelievable. So if that guy wants that kind of volume, he should be equalizing Audizies more often. Because
Well,
let me tell you, they can do volume. It's hilarious.
I mean, that's the thing is, I get the reason to test the edge cases like that because it allows it gives
it's
you
interesting data,
Yeah.
but you have to preface it with
Yeah.
not this is common and should be able to be
Yeah.
done by anything, because that's just not really applicable.
I mean,
It's fine to
if you're
show.
adding crazy shelf filters and stuff like that, maybe, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, actually, yeah, that's what I did. I oh man, I'm gonna get destroyed by the chat for mentioning this, but I think I've done like a 12, maybe 15 dB bass shelf on the LCD2 once, just for the heck of it, and then I put my Atom on high gain and maxed it out because it still wasn't like completely loud. It was just the bass was ridiculous, and seriously, the entire ear cup is like vibrating, but it's just like, yeah, whatever. This amp isn't even enough to break me. We're fine.
Yeah.
They
I-
are really funny how much they can actually tolerate.
I've when doing testing, like measurement testing on the rig, and I'm measuring for distortion, I will go up to like 114 dB, right? Because that makes the distortion quite a bit more readable, and you see the behavior
Yeah.
at the higher levels. So if anybody did want to, so for that, I totally understand why he's doing,
I think it's
loud.
more important to have the context. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
but
can show that measurements that may not be realistic at all, but you need to
Yeah.
provide the context so that people can understand. Hey, this is intentionally,
yeah.
pushing it.
The crazy thing though is that when you're measuring it on the rig for like open back headphones and you're measuring at those really like cranked volumes, you can actually hear the distortion happening from when you're not wearing the headphones. It's so loud that you're like, wow, that sounds like distortion. And then sure enough, there it is,
like 50%.
Yeah, on not on all headphones, but on some,
Yeah,
And it's like
Focal.
usually like fifth even, or something
Focal
ridiculous.
has a different problem. That's literally hitting excursion,
Yeah.
which actually can be an issue with some people, but I think that's still way too loud.
Well,
Like
the other thing with the focals is that maybe people are running these off of high output impedance sources and then cranking cranking it, right? So then it's like, oh well, then that's the situation where you could incur
Now
that.
they're like possibly well under damped, and so now their overshoot's going to be really bad.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. Sorry, did we even answer the Scott's
I don't
question?
even know. Wow, sorry guys.
Scott,
Oh no, I guess yeah. He's just asking if the Harman target would be different if it was scaled a different dB. It probably would, because of what is it, the Fletcher Munson,
equal
most
loudness
likely.
thing.
Yeah.
Wouldn't
So it probably
surprise
would
me.
be somewhat different if you asked people to adjust the shelves. at a different volume.
different
Yeah,
volume,
they probably
yeah.
would. And in fact, there are like this is why some receivers have that loudness. I think my Denon has a loudness option that I always keep it off. But if you turn it on, when you turn the volume really low, it gives you like extra bass and treble to try to compensate for something like that, make it sound louder than it actually is, or something like that.
Yeah.
So you have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
So it probably would be different. I guess that's the answer.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I agree. I don't know what would change about it, but I imagine it would be different. Yeah.
Yeah.
I cannot believe ASR's lowest distortion measurement is at 94 dB, which is already like 15 to 20 dB higher than my listening level. He's basing it off of like what the
Isn't that industry standard 94?
94, yeah. Wait, well, I mean, you're probably going to be listening around 85, right? And
Average,
then,
yeah.
Yeah, average. But then, yeah, like so the reasoning is well, there's a couple of things. One is it depends where you take that. It depends where you're taking that reference point. So if you're taking that reference point at 3K on a good headphone, it's going to be quite a bit higher than if you're taking it at like 1K. That for, or even in the bass, right, depending on the headphone. So that for starters is a bit of an issue. But then also there's the question about like the dynamic range of the music and the playback, and so like theoretically,
transients may hit 100 dB. Be
Yeah.
surprised, but I don't think they're going to hit like 115, 120 most of the time.
well,
though.
but then also here's the thing: even if it does, right, and say you have like that, if your measurement shows like that's where you have higher second or third order harmonic boost, even if that's within the audible range, which in most cases it's not. Because of the auditory masking effect with volume, you're never going to hear it, and we demonstrated that. We've got you know that's in that paper from Blaine and I, where you can hear the different, and it's a crazy effect, but you can hear how what we did is we took a 315 hertz tone, added a certain element of third harmonic distortion to it, and then increased the level of both proportionally, and you can hear it when it's at low volume, and at high volume you can't. Wow. Which is, it's like, you know, and that was even like super normal like volume listening for both. Like what, like the high volume was like 80 something and the low volume was like minus 30, and you can definitely hear it at minus 30, obviously depending on what you're playing it back at, right? And at a high volume it's completely gone. So that's why
distortion is much less of an issue to begin with.
What's that?
Than people think it is too. I think THD is also overblown in general, but that's a whole different tangent.
Definitely.
I don't know why DMG is running with this, but I don't actually normally listen to headphones with 20 dB bass shelves. My God, that was just a let's see what happens kind of a thing, because I've been told I can do this, and yeah. It works. But I don't usually use more than, I think my typical bass boosts on flat planar open backs is something like, it actually depends. It's interesting. It actually depends on how much slam I feel like they have.
Right.
Like on Sundara, I actually only added like 1 dB or something. And I was like, wow, this is actually pretty responsive. And then on LCD2 and LCD-X, I need like 3 or 4. But it also depends on the genre.
Yep.
Like it gets to be way too much bass if I'm listening to electronic and I got more than like 3 or 4 dB of boost already. That's just like crazy. But yeah,
this is something Android mentioned as well in one of the streams that we did, where he was saying that comparing multi-BA bass to dynamic driver bass, it feels like with multi-BA bass you just need more to like achieve the same level of feeling of bass compared to dynamic driver stuff. So
yeah. No, it's okay. DMG, that was an interesting discussion. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that before, but yeah, the amount of like perceived slam actually can affect the bass boost that you might desire. But anyway, I never recommend people just slap EQ profiles onto headphones and just go, which is why I like every time someone mentions AutoEQ, I'm just like, oh my God, cringe again.
Dude, so that's I have a video coming up about that tomorrow.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah. And because that happened to me, because I was so the Qdelix 5K, somebody actually mentioned it in the chat. That is such an amazing device, and it blew me away.
I really need to get one of those. I saw Oratory post a screenshot of it on the subreddit, on his subreddit, and I was like, wait, that's the app? That's amazing.
It's insane. And so but here's the funny thing. I was like messing around with, I was trying different headphones and using the AutoEQ profiles on it to see how it dealt with it. And for most of the headphones I tried, it was great. Like I tried
Some of
these.
them work really well, but that's the
Yeah,
thing. Some of them sound really strange.
but that's it's because of unit variation. So the
And
Utopia,
probably your anatomy and the
that too. Yeah,
system you're measuring it on. There's too many
yeah,
factors. It's like doing sound demos
yeah.
with EQ. Wow, I never thought of that,
Exactly.
but
Yeah,
that kind of is what it is
yeah.
like.
With the Focal Utopia, the auto EQ profile there is just on that particular Utopia that I had is super wrong, like just ass on head wrong. And it was crazy because I was trying all the other headphones. I was like, oh, this is great, perfect, brilliant, wonderful. Aeons, Celesti,
Yeah.
Aria, stuff like that. It's all just dialed in. Utopia, no, something's wrong there. So it's when there is unit variation, like potential unit variation or pad revisions or whatever else, right?
Yeah.
Throwing those profiles on, plus all the various different ear anatomy variables that
Right.
can be different among people. Yeah, you still got to use your ears.
I think my theory is now that we probably all experience, like, if a measurement shows a peak on like well, and it's not like some resonance due to the coupler or whatever. If it shows a peak somewhere or a dip somewhere, it's probably real, but where you actually experience it on your own head is not necessarily going to be at that same spot. That's what I look at graphs and I'm like, okay, this is what I expect. And then I put on the headphone and I'm like, usually it's like, oh, okay, it does kind of sound like the graph. And then the next thing I do is I run a sine sweep on my own head and I'm like, okay, well, these dips and peaks really are there, I think, but they're at this frequency and they're not where the graph shows over here. But it's usually like close, except for like that situation with the IEMs where it's more like 6K rather than 8K or
Yeah,
6K rather than
I
10K.
think the same would be
but
true
that's a little
for
different. That's been
Concha
my
as well.
experience. So
Like 8 9K on, and 8 to 10K basically on like
I actually hear a dip on like almost every Audeze around 9K, even though there's supposed to be a 9K dip
yeah.
there when I sweep.
Well,
But
that's what I'm
maybe
saying
that's
though.
actually
That's
normal and what is supposed to happen.
it's
That's another
so
thing, like listening for dips and peaks. Like you don't want to completely EQ based on sine sweeps either,
mhm.
because your ear is used to hearing a certain response, and
Yeah,
it's just trying to figure out like how close it's really interesting to compare, but don't do it like completely based on sine sweeps
yeah. I was
at the
thinking
same
also like
time.
because of the nulls there, it obscures what potential information there would be,
But if you
and
add a boost there, sometimes things sound very bad on
yes,
some
very
nulls.
bad. Yeah, but actually, like for me, I think it's like it's more like if I see the shape of the notch at 9K, if that looks the way, there's like a certain way that I feel like it's supposed to look, and then you're like, okay, that's the anthropometric pinna notch that it looks normal. But then there's other times where it looks wider, and then you're like, well, there probably is a dip there somewhere, right? It's just
Mm,
not necessarily exactly at that spot. But yeah,
yeah.
you got to listen.
Anyway, I'm off track again. But yeah, we need that Qtelix. I need one of those.
Yeah.
I upgraded from the ES100 to the BTR5 because the ES100 had this weird control where if you like, because I'm like a habitual volume adjuster. I don't
Oh
know
yeah.
why, but like if you double tap volume up, I think it goes to the next track, and I was like, oh my god, I can't even shut this off. Like
On the BTR, it's like you just hold it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You can actually there's a setting. I think you
Hmm.
can set it to hold or to double tap. So I have it on hold, so now I can like easily adjust the volume up and down.
Yeah.
Um,
I
are you
see.
supposed to hear a 9K dip? I don't know. On some over ears like Audeze's, I do hear one, but if you boost it, it doesn't
Oh
sound
yeah.
quite right either.
The issue is if you don't see a dip there, it's likely that there's a peak. That's the problem.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But
So
even I'm
maybe.
saying even on a sine sweep, I feel like I hear a dip
Yeah.
sometimes there.
Yeah.
But maybe that's also expected. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard.
Like I'm thinking of the original HE6 with the default pads. There's definitely a peak at 9K, and sure enough, there's no dip. So.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, do you and Metal have a target frequency curve for headphones and IEMs on the Squig Link? I know Resolves for headphones is 2013 Harman bass and 2018 treble.
I guess we can talk about which. And you actually do have a target that you use for everything. I don't know if that's the target you prefer
Oh,
for your own
for
listening too, but the
headphones
one
or
you
IEMs? Or...
the one you post, I guess. I guess for headphones.
Yeah, the only
Is that
reason
the one you try to
why,
target yourself too, or is that just for comparison?
right? There's two reasons why. So for myself, I think if the target is, so if whether it's with EQ or a headphone in general, gets pretty darn close to what I imagine the high res version of that target would be, then yeah, it does match with what I like. But typically, I do like a little more bass. Like I think I actually personally prefer the 2018 bass because I'm young and stupid. Um, uh, not that young anymore, I guess.
Yeah, not that young. Me
No,
either.
but the the thing that I do like. So let's just imagine that the defining characteristic for Harman though is the end of the end of the ear gain.
Yeah, the long slope down.
Yeah. So to me, I can see why people enjoy it to be more like flat there, meaning that it's boosted there. But I personally enjoy the clarity that following the ear gain all the way down gives. So I'd say yes, it is pretty close to what I like. If that's the defining character of Harman.
Yeah, my preference is really, really simple. It's really just
Yeah.
take Harman and reduce the upper mids and the bass shelf by like 3 dB,
Yeah.
something like that.
I also like.
It seems to be like agreed upon by
Yeah.
most of us reviewers now too. It's like Harman is too much bass and too shouty,
Yeah.
slightly, on
Yeah.
both of them. It seems like Crin's target is the same thing. Crin's target just intentionally omits the bass shelf because he wants to show how much bass there is rather than say this is how much bass there should be,
Right.
which I
Right.
totally agree with. But you
But
should consider
missing
that, yeah, you will probably have a certain amount.
missing ear gain here, omitting apparently, which yeah, that's.
Missing your yeah.
But no, I agree with like I also prefer a little less ear gain. Like 2013 ear gain is too much for me. 2018 is a little more balanced because it's a little less and a little bit more, relative to the treble. I mean,
Yeah.
and so I would almost even say a little less would be okay as well. Like for example, Sundara 2020, where it's not quite to the level. That would be ideal for me. Like thinking again of like the Dunu SA6 and the U12T for IEMs.
Man, the SA6 is
Those
so good. I know that like I've heard other people buy it and be like, "Wow, this is really boring, really warm." And I'm like, "Keep listening," because that's what happened to me. Like I tried it and I was like, "I don't notice anything interesting about this," and then I wore it for like 3 straight hours when I first tried it, and I just couldn't take it off. It was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, and
The
so
SA6 is super interesting like that.
yeah, and based on like I just should clarify, I don't have a personal IEM target, but like this gets back to that discussion before about like preference versus like correct, and I think I
Maybe
probably don't
might-
prefer correct.
I'm not even sure. Like, I'm not even sure I agree there should be a different IEM target. That seems weird because the IEM target seems exaggerated. A lot of us
Hold up
seem,
for Harman.
yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
us seem to agree on that too. It seems
Yeah.
exaggerated, and I'm not sure why. It might be something to do with the measurement system too,
Yeah.
and the way they seal. So
This
they
is what
may not
Jude was
actually
talking
have
about.
that much bass.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jude is wondering that because 5128 IEMs definitely measure differently in the bass. Seems
According to Blaine, that there is something to that, or
okay.
at least that was the way I interpreted that. That
Blaine confirmed.
the 5128 is going to be more accurate for IEMs.
Okay.
I mean, it's more accurate in general across the
We
board.
just
but,
it's harder to read the raws because we're not used to it yet.
yeah.
I think it's
So-
just because of the 8K thing though.
I'm not sure if I should bring this up, but there is so part of one of the projects that we're trying to figure out is a way of representing data. I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't have all the details yet, but there is theoretically a way that we can do compensated measurements without that big caveat of like, but which target are you using, right? Like, that's sort of the elephant in the room there. There's a way to do it
Yeah.
where we rely on what the actual measurement is from well, pointing over there at a piece of paper. It's what the actual measurement is for the or the actual HRTF would be of the system, and then we just use that, and once that's compensated, we then just look at that in reference to a speaker target, or what a like a flat represented as a flat relative to speaker preference. So it would still be Harman speaker preference, but it's based on it's based on a much more accurate measurement because it won't be the 1/2 octave smoothing or whatever that Harman is for
Well,
headphones.
if Blaine is working on it, then it'll probably everything I like will be down tilted to hell.
Yeah, I mean the idea is to make reading this stuff easier, and
BNK for headphones. Let's go. No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, theoretically, I think we could do that with a B&K as well, which
Yeah.
actually I hadn't even thought about, but that
I
now...
think we asked Blaine about that one.
Yeah.
Time. I forget what he said. It's not like directly applicable, but
No, but
interesting.
I mean, I mentioned this in the last live stream that, you know, if we know this stuff because we've been looking at
I
squiggly
know.
lines for however long, but imagine that you just come at this cold without any prior
I
knowledge.
know, and we're alienating the audience currently, probably. Not gonna
Sorry,
value
guys.
at all. But the upshot is, yeah, it would be nice to have like a.
Yeah.
Let's not keep throwing squiggly lines at people and make a readable like. What
Yeah.
does this sound like?
Yes.
Improving that is a big challenge, and also something that would really benefit a
Yeah.
lot more people than our tiny little click here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the project, but yeah, I'll let you know how that goes once we get that off the ground. There's a lot of
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah.
Some
always
that we
good. Oh god, log4j. Yeah, that's getting mentioned. That's just like a really bad vuln, as we
What is
say,
this?
or CVE. It's a software vulnerability that
Oh.
affects Java, which is like literally everywhere. So it's pretty bad. Basically, when I read up on it, not to go too far off track here, but if you pass a string into a program that has the vulnerability, you can pretty much just extract data from the server, like whatever you want. Like, hey, print this, and they're like, oh yeah, sure. It'll print somebody's like name, password, address, whatever. Like for example, that's quite bad.
That seems bad, yeah.
That's really really bad, and they keep finding more issues with it. Apparently now there's a third one that they found. That's crazy. But anyway, that's happening. What else is happening here? There were definitely some questions that we skipped. Let's see.
Yeah.
Does the Sundara sound grainy or harsh? No. Actually, that's why I was so surprised at it. If I look really surprised in my Sundara review, which I do, it's because every time I had heard the Sundara before reviewing it, I must have been one of the first people who discovered the quote-unquote revision, which I guess was apparently just the pads.
Yeah.
And when I finally got one, I was like, wait, what? There's no upper mid harshness at all here? What is happening? Something is not right. And if you look at the graph of the new one, you can see it definitely fills in under under your Harman target, I think, which is pretty obviously the case. So no, it's not harsh at all. Not anymore.
Yeah.
It used to be really shouty. Every time I heard it at shows, I swear it was definitely shoutier. So not anymore.
Are you going to go to New York still, or
Yeah, I'm gonna try to do that in February.
depending on if it happens?
I guess the only thing that'll stop me is if it happens. I still need to book the hotel for that.
Yeah.
Because last time I tried to go look, and it was like everything is non-cancelable, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I gotta look again.
I'm not totally sure if I'm going to go yet, but I might. I'd like to, but
I just don't travel. So that's like the one thing I do when I do travel. I mean, it's only one state away, so it's not that bad.
fair enough. Yeah.
But I do have to do 2 nights because I went in on the same day, Saturday, and I just don't like getting up early, so I'm not going to do that. I usually come into the city on Friday now, and then have dinner with like all the reviewers, I guess. Or so last time I think I had dinner with like DMS and Z at the same time. One of the times I've been there like 3 times now. But the best part is juniors, though. Oh my god, that cake is like that's the reason you gotta go.
If I go, that's
Get
we
the
have
cheesecake.
to. I mean, that's the thing is that I definitely missed out a lot on that element of it last time because we were just like booked.
We're
like,
so busy and
so busy, yeah.
shoot up all the time, yeah.
Yeah.
On video.
Well, and now thankfully I think we'll have faster turnarounds for that stuff. It'll be easier to do, but yeah.
Yeah,
It was definitely an issue.
make Chrono and Precog keep the camera and you just wander.
I'd love it if Chrono could come down because he's in Maine, so at least he's on the right side
not
of
as
it.
bad.
Yeah.
It'll be warmer than where he is.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Why not?
I think
Anyway.
there were some more questions in here to dive into since we've been talking about other stuff. By the way, shout out to Banbeo. He also does measurements and has a
Banbeo's great.
channel and website. So definitely check that out.
This is the most V-shaped live chat. Oh, is that because my mic is? That's probably because I'm using the proximity effect, and that's really different than where Resolve has his mic.
Unless I have an EQ on, but I don't think I do.
Oh, the one
it's turned off.
I know you use one for the RE. Wait.
No. I apply a parametric EQ afterwards.
So you don't record it with it. Okay.
No, because
there's a little bit of sibilance on the Electro
exactly.
voice. That's what it is.
Yep.
And this is a Rode NT1 I've been using forever, and people give it a lot of compliments. But yeah, it's a little weird how much bass it has. It's a little unrealistic because it's close. Sorry. Yeah.
Or maybe it's V-shaped because you're bassier and I'm more trebly.
Apparently.
Yeah. Let's see.
What?
Oh, I see one here. I'm trying to decide between Sundara and Ananda. I love the detail and imaging of Ananda, but I feel like they're too open for metal music. You think the HE6 SE V2 would be a better option? Yes. Yes, I do.
Ananda versus HE6 SE V2.
So the Ananda technically has a more balanced frequency response across the board. I just think that the HE6 SE V2 would be more fun.
And also with I assume it's probably relatively more recessed in the mids.
It's got that 1K dip out. Yeah.
Okay.
But they both do. That's just sort of the way that those Hi-Fi Man headphones work. But the Ananda's, it's a little north of just a little north of the target there for ear gain for the above 3K. And the HE6 SEV2 is not. I mean, it is slightly at 3K, so you probably still want to EQ a little bit, add a bass shelf, and then you'd be good. So yeah, I'd say the HE6 SEV2 if you can get it on that sale for like whatever $600 or something ridiculous.
Wow, that's pretty good.
That was insane. I don't know if they still have that. I was tempted. I was like,
I'm so far behind on the Aria. That's something that I regret. I really need to. I missed the second one. I missed the SE. Someone was posting about how the SE was really airy unnecessarily.
You're not gonna like it. The stealth. Well, no, both of them I think are. Well, I shouldn't say that because they fixed the sibilance issue, kind of. It's just still too bright, for people who like warm stuff,
well, at least it's not an Audeze copy. Hifiman really has their own signature, and they try to stick with it. It seems like with a lot of this stuff. So
well, it'd be great if they could get it on all their stuff, but sometimes they really don't.
Doesn't the 400 SE and like the Sasfara measure really similarly in the mids and treble, which is one of the more interesting things about it?
I didn't find them to measure that similarly, but they both.
I was almost gonna recommend that when Olive asked on Twitter, "What's a low or high resolution like headphones to compare?" Felt like those might be close, but maybe not. Maybe there's a better.
The ones to choose that I would recommend is the HE5XX, or the Deva, and the Sasvara, because they use the same layout for the driver, so it's the same kind of like so they would fit technically in the same chassis theoretically, right? It's not the perfectly round thing, it's that more kind of ovoid thing, or like not oval but like has a little bit more of an elongated shape,
right? And not egg.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Egg Hi-Fi Man,
eggy man.
chassis, that's what people call it.
So I think that would work. You'd have to then EQ them to the same target,
right?
And we talked about this before, but like the reason why that's compelling is because nobody should say that, oh, the difference is that the distortion is lower on the higher end one, therefore it sounds better to you, because we already know that if it's below 0.01 or whatever %, which most of them are,
is very hard to.
It doesn't matter.
Anyway,
Is it 0.1%? Yeah, 0.1%. It's not subjectively.
0.1%. I have a hard time hearing THD that's like lower than 10% on some of those like YouTube. Like, when do you start noticing THD? Look away from the screen thing, and I was shocked. Last time I did that, I was like, wait. Okay, it started, and then I looked at the video and I was like, you are at 10% right now. And it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, but
I
I
don't
think
think
there's a sense in which I think a lot of people think that it's parts to the whole thing. Like you might not be able to hear it, specifically, but it contributes to the overall experience, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Something like that.
But still, it's got to be much higher than people think. It's definitely got to be
Totally.
higher than negative like 110 dB or something.
Oh, definitely. You definitely can't hear that. Like
Like
that's ridiculous. Yeah.
that's back to the sources again thing. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I
What's
mean,
the
that's the
word?
thing. It's like multiple studies have proven this, so this is also
Yeah,
why I don't.
it's not news.
Never mind the
Scott
fact that
says,
all headphones have way more distortion than most
I
amplifiers.
know exactly. That too.
Yeah.
All right, Scott says, "What's the worst audiophile BS
Oh, I love
you've
this
heard?"
question.
We could go on for this for a whole stream, probably.
Worst audiophile BS. Okay, I have an answer, but I'll let you go first.
Um, it's too tempting to pick cables because it's. I certainly have never had that experience. And how do you even A/B cables? It takes way too long, almost, to switch them out. First of all,
Oh, I know.
so that's kind of ridiculous to me.
If you had
Now
two
oh,
units,
the worst though, yeah, even if you had two units, still,
unit variation is yeah.
yeah, I know. The worst is probably the whole like amp stands and rocks and crystals. That stuff is probably the absolute worst I've seen, most likely. And I think it's I don't generally watch Darko, but I loved his April Fool's video
Yes,
where he talks about plants affecting the sound. I think
he's
is
very
what it was.
self-aware.
That was one of the best ones, just
Yeah,
but intentionally funny.
yeah. So my answer to that is going to be things. So definitely the stuff like the rocks and whatever else. That's so like
I
dumb.
know.
But there are like things that people take seriously, um, like for whatever reason, like audiophile SSDs or audiophile SD cards. That type of stuff. Audiophile Ethernet cables. Um, there's stuff like that where I'm just like,
It's hard not to laugh at that.
yeah, like how do you? And then also, I mean, of course, there's stuff like putting door stoppers on top of solid state DACs and things like that. Um,
Oh man.
which I mean, like people think that makes a difference, and yeah, reduces vibrations, therefore.
I feel like so this is something that I was thinking about the other day. It's like I feel like this hobby is only interesting if you want it to be interesting because it's so easy to take the route of just find the cheapest thing with the frequency response you want, buy it, and
Yeah,
then be done. What else is there? And I think that's great because then you don't have to spend all this money for stuff you don't care about.
for me, it would be this. This is the Aeon X Closed, and it has a frequency response. So it's the drop version, and the frequency response is just like almost exactly what I want. It's remarkably good.
They
But
really got it that good with the what is it? The is that because of the pad change
pad
thing?
change, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
perfect pads,
But
and it's
everything else, technical performance wise,
it's a little blunted, a little on
yeah.
the dulled side, but at the same time, it's like I also am fine with that because it's not super expensive. I think they had this on sale for like 375 at one point, 379.
Wow, that's
And I was thinking like like maybe at the original
kind of
price of like
sounds good deal.
800 or whatever it was, 700, and that's you'd want something a little bit more detailed there, but like or like yeah, obviously the question about planar compression and all this stuff comes up, and yeah, like this is the perfect example. But at whatever price it was on sale there recently, it might still be, I'm not sure, or no, they sold through on it. It's probably the best close back headphone out there. I don't think there's anything better. Like it's to a certain extent, closebacks have been figured out with the K371. But if you want a planar, there is nothing better than this one until you get to the noir. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
I don't even know anymore what the difference is between the X, the RT, and the Noir,
Uh,
and then it's like
yeah.
what
I don't know I don't know what
what
the
is even
RT
going
is.
on?
I haven't checked that one out
I
yet.
think that stands for retune. That might be a
Retune, yeah.
retuned Aeon One. What
It's
is the X? Is that
this
is
is
that an Aeon Two based?
no, it's just the original Aeon. So there's the original Aeon, which was closed, which was also a decent decent FR, not crazy good, but like decent. And then this is the drop version of that. So they changed the pads, and the pads here are also more comfortable than the Aeon one. I did compare those two.
Oh, it's also different pads than an Aeon 1. Okay, that's
yes. So this is an Aeon 1 with different pads.
Okay.
Essentially. What I don't know is if this is also the same as the RT, or if the RT actually has something different going on internally. I'm not sure about that. Because the problem is that these have the unit variation is potential is quite high on these because of how significant the pads are to the tuning, and the pads they're enormous, right? So like, and they always kind of compress slightly differently. So the results that you get for the FR,
can't rebend the headband because it's
and that too. Yeah, exactly. But like it's the potential for variation is much higher with these, so it's very difficult to tell based on measurements if it's the same as the RT or if they're actually different, because even the measurements for two of my units, two units that I had from drop, they measured differently from one another, and they also measured differently from what Amir got as well. So it's like, I don't know.
I've heard rumors about the Aeon unit variation. I don't know what's causing it, but yeah, it could be the pads if they're that significant.
Well,
I'm not surprised.
Another thing is that with these, the pads are affixed with adhesive, and they have
so
to
it's not easy to swap them. Now, I was going to
Yeah.
ask if you tried that. Yeah.
No, and they have to be affixed. I know it sucks, but like it has to be like that because the driver resonance is like 500 hertz on these. So if you didn't have the adhesive or something to like permanently keep it, there, you wouldn't have any bass response whatsoever, or you would lose a lot. And what I think on some units, if there's even like an air bubble in the adhesive, which does happen on these, because I've taken pads off of other ones, right? It totally wrecks the bass response. So yeah, they got to be pretty careful with those. But no, this is like and DMS I think did a video about this as well, and he said it was like the best close back under $500, and like I kind of agree. Like it has a frequency response that is so good that like even though it's not the most technically impressive and it has like issues with like not having much for dynamics and stuff like that and what we call dynamics, it's still it makes up for it. Like it's
just a pleasant listen.
It's just so easy to get along with. Yeah.
If you get a good one.
Right. Exactly.
I swear, the only way to guarantee that you're going to like a headphone now is like
become a reviewer.
You need to listen. You need to listen to 5 examples of the same one, and then hand pick the one you want. Like it has to be made with exactly that stuff, and then when the pads wear out, you replace them, and then it becomes junk. It's like, it's like, what in the world?
I think Sennheiser has really good tolerances for their unit consistency. And I
think so, but they still have to change, suppliers because they've run these products for decades. So I don't know. I've been thinking about getting I guess if you were to buy new pads for the 650 now, they'd probably be the latest. I thought about buying them, even though I don't think these are really wearing out because I don't use these as much as I used to. I thought about buying them just to see if I can notice a difference.
Blaine was telling me that with one of the reasons why the Sennheiser HD800S is so consistent is because a lot of the tuning the pads don't contribute all that much to the tuning.
Okay.
So that probably helps if you have a design where the pads are not all that influential. So you can basically design around all the other parameters, and then you get that consistency. But it's like all these imperfect materials, right? Like pads, wood, things that are like
a lot of stuff is dependent on supply chain. That's just the reality. And like, supplier decides, hey, we're going on a business, we're not doing this anymore. And then you got to scramble, and then you end up with, things like memory foam pads from Audeze, possibly.
Jesus Christ, yeah.
I still wonder when that started. I don't know. Probably sometime in 2018. But anywho,
let's see if there's any more questions in here. We've been going for about an hour and a half. We'll go for a little bit longer. Maybe like 15 minutes. Works for you?
I'm good for I'm good for another 30 minutes if we want.
Okay, sure, yeah.
I don't know how many people are gonna stay for that, but I don't even know how many people are watching now.
Now would be a good time for me to plug our subscriber giveaway.
for
goals.
the real ones.
Yeah, no, we haven't hit 50K yet, but if we hit 55, I can't remember what I said. 55, we'll give away
that's
3
when you're doing the
Celestes.
giveaway. Okay.
Yeah, if we hit 60K, we'll give away 5 clears. So it's like,
Jeez.
yeah, we're not gonna hit it. We don't have Kryn
This
power.
is a one up game on Grin. Like,
Oh,
what
totally.
is he gonna? If you guys win that, what is he gonna give away after that? 6 Susvaras. like what is the next step?
I actually think a lot of people don't know about our giveaways because I think
Giveaway war.
somebody tried to post our giveaway on Reddit and it wasn't one of us, but then it got removed because it was associated with a store. And they're like, yeah, can't do that. So.
Oh, is that plugging?
I think,
That
but
again,
yeah, but
like,
it wasn't one of
promotion
us.
or
That's the
something?
thing.
Oh,
So
but it wasn't you.
Yeah,
Oh,
no.
that's weird. Oh.
But yeah. Let's see. I heard an interesting video that headphones are not stereo. What? I heard an interesting video that headphones are not.
How did that sentence just start?
I heard an interesting video that headphones are not stereo. That you can't hear what's on the left with your right ear, and vice versa. For that speaker. Oh, I see what you're saying. Like you're talking about.
Oh, you're talking about
Crossfeed.
Crossfeed. Yeah.
And there are devices like amps and stuff like that that will. This one, I'm pointing at one that has it where you can flip a switch and it does do that. I'll give you my take, and I want your take as well on this, Metal. My thinking is that like the only way to get realistic sound would be with binaural, like through headphones, would be with binaural recordings. And I get why people do the crossfeed thing to try and make it a little bit more like speakers to get that feeling. But
when
for
it's
me,
mixed on speakers originally,
yeah. So I understand why people do that, but for me, that always ends up sounding not. It sounds like less clear to me.
Yeah, I have never really been a crossfeed fan. When I'm listening to something on headphones, I'm totally fine with how it sounds on headphones, just that experience, because it is going to be different than speakers, but that's okay. I don't want to mess with that, except for EQ. But crossfeed I don't usually do. But yeah, I think that's true. Like if you want to actually record what really occurred somewhere, I think a binaural head is probably the only way.
Yeah.
Another interesting side effect of recording with a binaural head is I think you actually are only going to listen to it back properly when you have a diffuse field headphone or something like that. I forget. That's what I've heard. That's like the only situation where like you should match what the binaural frequency. I don't know what
binaural
it is.
heads HRTF.
It's definitely a different target though. I think when you're listening back to it, if you want to hear what was recorded accurately, it's very different than just the Harman target.
Diffuse field loudness equalization.
Oh no, not that one. So the HD800 is mostly affected by it. I mean, that's been the guess all along, right? It's mostly affected by its wacky chassis design, more so the frequency response than anything else.
Sorry, I see the best comment from Gary Cole. Andrew, do you still think that the Cos Porta Pro outperforms the Susvara when you triple the HD800S pads on the Pros? Still experimenting.
Wait,
yes.
How does that?
Someone's gonna go out and buy those pads and put them on the Cos Porta Pro now. Oh god, he's joking.
How?
He's joking.
Like I was like, something I actually did do for fun once. When I still had my 800, I put wow, I can't even move my hand correctly anymore. I put my 660S or 650 pads, one of those. Like I took the 800 pad off and I put the 600 pad like over it and then just like pushed it onto my head so it stayed there. Didn't clamp on anything. And I listened to it and I was like, oh my god, the frequency response suddenly is more like a 660 now. That was my experience with that.
Interesting.
It's so I think a lot of what it's true. I think a lot of what the 800 is because of the huge opening and the chassis design and all that stuff. If you put 600 pads on it, it starts to sound more like a 600 in frequency response specifically.
And
really weird.
In some circles, pads don't matter. All right, that's the last.
You don't need any pads. Get rid of them.
Yeah.
Put the speaker right up to your. That's called an IEM actually.
Yeah.
But
yeah, just listen padless. Yeah, that's how you increase resolution.
Get those reflections out of the way. Just have
Yeah,
none. Have no. Have just let the air out.
yeah, exactly.
I don't know. All right, enough of that. Let's see. Someone wants headphones for jazz. That's not me. That's you.
Headphones for jazz.
Yeah.
Hifiman says.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too.
I mean, I'll still say Sundara 2020, or some of those like Ananda type stuff is great for jazz. Anything that is clarity focused and has ear gain and is balanced for harmonics.
Which is definitely more Hifiman than actually LCD5 might work pretty well. Though it's kind of dark.
Yeah, you'd
And
still
the
need to
double
EQ a little
though.
bit, I think.
But if you are an ear gain enthusiast, then
Yeah.
that's a good option.
Yeah, it probably depends on the price they're looking at.
Yeah, they didn't give a price range.
See, I
You
love
should only
this.
do reviews with 3 units of
Oh,
standard for unit variation. I have pitched that before. I'm like, I wish that everything I reviewed had at least 3, ideally
Yeah.
probably more like 5 examples, so that we could see. And the other problem is if you let the manufacturer do it, it's going to be wrong. They're going to cherry pick. Like, well,
Yeah.
why wouldn't
You
you?
have to
If you're a
buy 3.
business, you have to buy 3 to 5 units yourself, randomly selected from the factory, and then
Yeah.
even then, 2 years later, they could be completely different.
Yeah.
So like, it still doesn't completely solve it, but yeah, it's unfortunately not very practical.
Yeah. But that's also kind of how it goes, I think. There's a sense in which, like, I'm glad that Audeze moved away from the memory foam pads.
Oh
It's
my
like,
God.
if they're gonna improve stuff, then that's a good thing, even though it is a little bit
I don't know how many
frustrating.
times I've had to tell people, like, look, we measured it, and you can't hide from the fact that these pads really damaged the
Yeah.
tuning of these headphones. Like, people are going to measure them. This is 2018, 19, 20, 21.
Yeah.
We're measuring headphones. Like, if you're going to put major pad revisions without telling people, we're going to find out anyway.
Yeah.
So, like, don't do that.
Yep.
So my only guess as to why that happened at all must have been something with supply chain.
So somewhat related
It's over now.
to unit variation, I have a question for you. You know how, like, we represent data, most people who do measurements, like myself, Corinne, I'm not sure about Brent Butterworth, but the folks who are using the Gross 43 AGs and 45 CAs and whatnot, you know how, like, the target is smooth to 1/3 or 1/2 octave, and we typically smooth the headphones frequency response to 1/24 or 1/12.
Is that how you guys post it?
I
Yeah.
post it typically like that, yeah.
Okay.
And the question that I would have is, given A, unit variation, and B, the fact that the target is not high res, what do you think would there be any sense in representing the data smooth to the same degree that the target is, even though that's technically misleading what the actual data has?
Yeah, well, I'm probably not the right person to ask, because as somebody who's an engineer, like, I don't want any smoothing at all. I just want to see exactly what's
Exactly what it is, yeah.
recorded.
Yeah.
But even that's not technically right. If there's any kind of environmental noise, then
Yeah.
no smoothing is also going to be not quite accurate either, and nobody can completely eliminate environmental noise either.
Yeah.
So
But for readability, you know what I mean? And
for
getting
readability,
a sense of
yeah,
sound
I
profile.
think so for the general audience, but
Yeah.
I would like to have an option, but again, I'm not most people to see what the raw really was with no smoothing, all the tiniest, like, little wiggles there.
There's probably a way to do it, kind of like how Ratings does it, where they have, like, here's the general sound profile compensated to whatever they
I
have.
think their peaks and dips that section's really interesting. I'm not sure what math is behind the peaks and dips section, but they have this section that's called that like, relative to, I guess, the nearby FR, how quickly it changes as it goes up. So, like,
Interesting.
it's like locally, like, how bad of a peak relative to the rest of the frequency response was this section. I think that's what it's representing. That I find interesting because
Yeah, it
that's
is.
relative to what the headphone is like trying to achieve. Like if it's smoothly harsh or smoothly bassy, you're still not going to see anything that's like a major peak or dip there, but narrow stuff gets shown. But in
Yeah,
the overall,
but
I
there
think
is
that's
also
something.
a potential that narrow stuff isn't all equally bad.
Yeah, that too.
Like
If
there's
it's too narrow, I mean, Olive has tried to pitch that. I guess this is probably research supported, but if it's a really narrow peak or a dip, like chances are most people aren't even going to notice it a
yeah,
lot of the time. So,
yeah,
which makes sense.
yeah, and there's people who like the way that the HD800S sounds.
Oh God.
You know, it's
And I own the 800, which was
even worse.
more.
Yeah, yeah. For that
Actually,
particular
comparing those
quality.
those two headphones are ridiculously similar. Like they're a lot more similar. I think than maybe people think
Yeah.
too. The two I had side by side when I reviewed the 800S, I basically said, well, 800S EQ is a little bit better because it doesn't. It feels like there's less glare at that peak as well as
The
having a little
6K.
less of the peak. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I found. But other
Mhm.
than that, they're like really pretty much identical. But
Yeah.
it's still too much.
Did you
Still
talk
sounds
to
weird.
Jude at all about the
Oh, the
HD800?
distortion thing.
Yeah.
I knew you were gonna bring that up. I knew that's where this was going. Honestly, at the time, I didn't really notice a significant difference in the way the bass was represented between them
Hmm.
either.
Interesting.
And yet, early on, Tile had like 3 or 4 units that he measured that all had like much worse THD. So that almost makes me wonder if they actually made a mistake early on and then revised it, and all the 800Ss since have not had that issue. Um, Almost points to that.
Could
I
be,
don't
but
know.
weren't tiles also SDR mod reversed?
No, he had real
Oh, did he have real
800Ss that
ones?
he was,
Okay.
yeah, like
Oh,
three or
S's.
four,
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah, 3 or 4
Yeah.
S's with the bass.
Hmm.
THD was crazy.
Yeah.
I had a regular stock 800 and a stock 800S, and I really didn't think the bass was that different between them when the ones I tried. So it's possible that even if there is a THD difference somehow, it's not
Yeah,
it
not
wasn't
meaningful.
audible to me at least.
Yeah.
But anywho,
Um, I had another question for you, and I totally forgot what it was, so maybe it'll come back to me. In the meantime, we can show off our keyboards.
no, no, here we
Metal made
go.
me do this.
I made you do this.
This is
I
the
I I just want to preface that the fact that I also have a GMMK Pro does not in any way, shape, or form mean I support the brand or what they do. Because I know somebody's going to yell about it.
yeah. Um, I did have some thoughts on the glory. I'll need to do a video about this because I have the drop control and the Holy Panda switches, and I just there's no way that I'm not going to do a keyboard review on these.
Have you tried the Bobas on the control also?
No, but I still have
I
I
want to
haven't
know if
installed all
they
of them yet. I got some of them
okay.
left, and I want to
I
do
want to
them
know
on
if they bounce
yeah.
over there too.
Yeah. So I should probably okay. So like the without any lubing or any modification whatsoever, the Holy Pandas just feel way better than the Boba U4Ts. Like they feel like more satisfying and also easier to type on.
Is the U4T just like a clear like stem,
It's
MX clear, just like
it's
a big bump but sharp?
so I'll
Whereas the Panda is more rounded, right?
yeah, that's basically I would describe it as similar, somewhat similar to the Panda, just much more tactile because it has a more
Okay.
pronounced bump.
Oh, it's a
And
more pronounced rounded bump then? Oh,
something like that, yeah.
okay.
But to me, it's like too like the bump itself causes it to be too like the
Heavy.
friction to be too much
Yeah, okay.
without lubing them.
That makes
And
sense.
so what I did was and it's funny because I first used these caps. I know and somebody needs to say Keebs out. I first used these MT3 caps, and I found that I did not
Even
like
worse.
yeah, it was worse. But then here's the thing: I lubed up just the slider pieces on the and the spring on the U4Ts, and it got. I can see why people like that. Like can see why because the people who were like, I really want super tactile. I can see why they would like that. But even for me, I was like, even still, it's like it's too stiff for the tactile bump. So I then lubed the tactile bump on some of them and compared them to the Pandas, because I still have some of the keys here as the Pandas. And the Boba U4Ts with lube on the stems as well I like it a lot better than the Pandas. Like the whole thing just feels better. And this is versus lubed Pandas and unlubed Pandas. I have both.
Yeah.
So I can see why people are like, they're like, yeah, the Boba U4Ts are like the best tactile switch. But to me, without any adjustment,
you gotta put effort into it.
You gotta put effort into it. I would never use it without doing that.
That's a pain.
Yeah, so I have to do that for the rest of the
Man.
But yeah, keyboards, that's the next rabbit hole. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, what switches are you using in that right now?
I still have box reds right now left over because I don't want Gaterons because I have to push them just slightly further down to register than a cherry that I was used to before.
Right.
And that was throwing me off enough that I didn't want it. But I actually like the slightly shorter total distance of the box switches.
Is box reds linear?
Yeah, they're just linear. They're definitely smoother than any cherry, but they're not as smooth as like Gaterons, and especially not Telios and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I don't prioritize necessarily smoothness as much as like how fast I can type, and I can do like 146 now, I think, on this board.
Yeah, I'm nowhere
which
near
is
that.
Incredible. I've never been able to type that fast before.
Yeah.
That's almost like my goal. But my experiment I still want to do is I don't want MX Browns, but I like that amount of tactility. I want more than that, but I don't want like MX Clear level of tactility or like Boba U4T. So I want something in between. So I have a bunch of Kale Browns, which are a little bit more tactile than cherries, and I want to put them in some other housing and see what happens. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, one of these keyboards is going to be my office keyboard, and the other one's going to be my home keyboard. I don't know which is going to be which, but like
should work.
Yeah, and both are. So that's the thing with the big issue with that drop one is the debounce issue. If not for that, that would be perfect with the Holy Pandas.
Yeah, I feel like you might just had a bad batch then. Hopefully that other switches work in the control.
Yeah.
I think we bored everybody now.
Sorry, guys. Okay, looking for an open back top of the line headphone that excels in contemporary music, rap, dance, rock. All these top of the line phones seem to be overly bright and bass light in the FR. That's actually a good observation, because they do tend to be
kind of true, especially above 10K there. That's also what Olive's Gadgets, who's not used to listening to the high end stuff, said whenever he went to the store. He's like, "Why is there so much boost to like all the treble?"
No, I have an answer for that. The reason is because the demographic that
kind of people are there,
are quite a bit older.
Yeah.
So,
and I admit I don't hear that great above 14K myself, so they probably are sounding better than they might to other people. Like I think Golden Sound said when he reviewed the Clear MG, it had like this giant 16K spike or something on it, and he was like, I just can't deal with this. But most people probably won't even hear this who are buying it.
Yeah, that's a
but
fair
he
point.
ran into that, and I was like, wow, that's really interesting, because that's certainly going to start becoming an issue.
Yeah.
With younger reviewers and people who
it's
really sensitive hearing that goes out all the way.
And I would agree. Like that was one of the reasons why I preferred the original Clear over the Clear MG, is because the upper treble emphasis on the MG, at least the one I heard, right?
It was the same problem.
I wouldn't have said it was a peak, because to me it was like the whole range in the upper treble was just a little. Yeah, and they fixed the peak in the mid treble, that the OG Clear has. So that's it's smoother there, but at the same time it's like I guess it's easier to EQ because you can just downshelf that. So there's that.
Yeah, it's not possible.
Yeah.
Look for ZMF Aeolus.
Sorry, I didn't answer that guy's question. The top of the line that excels at contemporary music. What do we think? Rap, dance, and rock. Rock is difficult because it's not.
Dance and rock are orthogonal to each other.
Yeah, like maybe it's just me, but like I tend to think that like for rock you want more mid bass and upper bass.
Yeah. I think it sounds better that way. There's not a lot of information often in the sub bass
Yeah.
anyway.
But like you listen to like
Um,
EDM or something that has like
but
really
now you need
ridiculous. Yeah, yeah,
extension, but not necessarily. But you definitely don't want mid bass emphasis. Yeah, it's
yeah.
like weird. I don't know.
Um,
I definitely fall into that demographic where my EQs are designed to make metal, which is like an extreme uh, N shape, and also EDM, which is an extreme V shape, like mastering both sound acceptable at the same time, which is probably why they're so dark all the time. That's actually a lot of why
yeah.
they are the way they are. Um,
I'm
I
gonna
don't know.
recommend the LCD5 and then
I was
just
gonna
EQ.
I was gonna say the four though, because the mids could get annoying with some of the guitars and rock.
Yeah, but the four is
If
also
it
upper treble boosted a little bit, depending on which one you get, which
Yeah,
is
it
still
depends on
like,
which one. I haven't heard the one with the 2021 pads. I hope that they don't have giant boosts above 10K still.
no,
But
they don't. It's not as good as Flux's.
okay,
Closer to like
but
those older ones, I think. Yeah,
it is closer to the older ones though. Yeah,
yeah,
Flex's was like it had a surprising amount of upper mids for being an Odyssey still with
yeah,
the not the before the memory foam pad revision. But it also never had too much air, which was great.
yeah.
My EQ was like adding 1 maybe 2 dB to the mids and that was it. It was really
Hmm.
close. So maybe it's more like that now. I don't know.
Yeah. Other than that, I would say maybe a Utopia because it punches. It's a slammy boy. But also, yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to agree that it's not as detailed as a planar that's up
Yeah,
there.
and the last bit of sub bass if you're gonna spend the
Yeah,
money.
yeah.
I don't
Actually,
know. That's hard.
yeah,
Whatever
it's a
you do,
tough
you probably
question.
have to EQ it. That's what I think it might come
That's
down
the
to.
answer.
If you're trying to listen to like modern genres, or
Yeah,
like modern mastering, more so than genre, modern mastering with very high-end headphones, it doesn't work very well most of the time, which is pretty funny because that's what I do all the time with these
yeah.
headphones without
The
EQ.
Get the DCA stealth.
Actually, that
It's
is
got the right
possible.
frequency response.
That's true.
As long as you position it the right way, like kind of.
Is that what it is? I still haven't heard that thing. I have so much I need to listen to when I get
Yeah,
to Cane Jam. It's
it's my
ridiculous.
problem with it was that it was actually shouty when I had it in the normal position, and then if I moved
Wow.
it like that, it sounded really normal.
Man, that's
So
strange.
yeah, elite better for audio elitist. Someone says Meze Empyrean.
Meze Elite
I
for
don't.
elitist.
I don't. Yeah.
It's
It's
not. I think it's a. Here's what's interesting. I think it might actually be a good option. It's just you're really spending way too much for what you're getting.
yeah, like or like as I think I mentioned this in one of the reviews that like those other things really need to matter, like comfort and you have to get joy out of using the the extension system because it
Yeah,
it's good, it's well
it
made.
is. It is really, really, really well made.
So um, you should talk about certain music tracks that you use to review. We just listened to Sine Sweeps. um,
Something that's interesting is I don't think. I guess there's some value in providing a playlist that we actually use, but there's actually less than people think
mhm,
of a value. I think because a good reviewer will take into account any preferences, and they will
yeah,
take into account that okay, here's what I like. So if you like a little bit more of this region and this region, then you will probably like this, and they need to account for that. It's not as much of what we listen to as here's what the tuning will be, and with this kind of mastering, it will work well, and with this kind, it may not. Like there's been a lot of situations where it's like this headphone's really really good, but it's not for me. In fact, that's kind of like the LCD5. Like it's just too shouty for me, and
hmm
the EQ is a larger knock against it that I can't EQ down the upper mids than the headphone itself because it's still really good. But you have to like forward mids, really warm treble, but detailed, and flat bass, unless you're gonna EQ the bass.
yeah,
So it's too much nuance. It's not like Give me something good. It's like people ask for what's a good headphone. I'm just like, we can't do that here. It doesn't work. I can't respond to that.
I can give answers for good headphones.
Yeah, I
AKG
mean, I
K371.
I mean, yeah, no, I mean, I could, but like, it's gonna be a lot worse of a recommendation probably than
Yeah.
you might want.
Yeah, but I tend to agree that like you do have to anticipate what somebody's gonna like the thing for, and but also like there's the sense in which like maybe it's just a hot take, but like I get the feeling that when you're reading impressions that people have of headphones, even if they've tried a number of different headphones, I often get the feeling that what they fall in love with is their music, and because they're listening to music that they already like, it's having a positive valence or something like that. And so that's why, I mean, this sounds super counterintuitive, because I think you should listen to your own music and stuff you're familiar with because you know what it sounds like.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think you have to listen to your music as if you're not listening to your own music, so that you don't have that positive influence on you being like, oh, I love this track, It's difficult to do.
Yeah, I try to be tied to, I know what this track is supposed to sound like.
Yes.
Not how I want it to sound like. Yeah. However, when you buy a headphone, you should buy the headphone that makes the music sound the way you want it to sound, not the way I think it should sound. That gets really difficult. You have to parse that. If you're a really good reviewer, you have to think about that. 'Cause that's tough.
Or you can just say that everybody's music taste other than yours is trash.
It's like if I listen to metal all day with really harsh recordings, and everything I review, nope, that's shouty, nope, that's shouty, nope, it's not shouty, it's shouty for me. But if you listen to jazz or really well recorded vocals, like that could be recessed. Like it's difficult.
Yeah.
So
and for me, like my two genres, and it seems really polarizing and weird, but it's jazz and metal.
Yeah.
It's weird that those are the two, but like I like music with instruments, and they're both kind of like very good at that, right? So at least in good cases. Actually, I see somebody here mentioning Periphery, and that is one of the bands that
Periphery's good.
Yeah.
And I like Carcass, so that's probably what's going to separate Andrew and I. Yeah.
Yeah, but
it doesn't matter. It's still like the overall way it's mastered is certainly not the same as like an audiophile jazz recording. So it's definitely plays into the preference. Like Sean Olive has said that EQ based on genre is just wrong, like the rock preset or whatever. Generally, I agree, because those are way too coarse grained in assumptions. But there are differences, I think, overall in mastering of certain genres, and you probably wouldn't consider those genres music at all. But
well,
like
trends,
electronic music.
Yeah. I don't, but
so like that's fair. Like
no, I've been wanting. Here's the thing, though. I've been wanting. I keep asking Taryn to give me recommendations for like electronic music, because I know so many people are buying something for that purpose, and so or like they're looking for that reason. So you have to like have a set of like, okay, how does this sound with this stuff that a large portion of people are going to be looking for something for.
I still have test tracks for myself from this. It's funny. Z actually used to use them from an artist called Haywire. Haywire. Those. Yeah. I think those are fairly representative of what it's going to sound like with the general EDM.
Yeah.
So if you want to have that covered, that's one example I know of. Oh yeah, I had the Sparks over here the whole time, and I forgot to say anything about it.
But floor is yours if you want.
Sparks are pretty good. All right, we're over 2 hours now, so
we'll end it with this.
Somewhat quickly.
Yeah.
So this is the part that no one will see. That's good. No.
I need to get hire somebody to put timestamps in retroactively for all the live
streams.
streams.
we need to hire somebody. It needs to be a whole nother person. Seriously. Sparks are really cool. I did another mini review of them. They have EQ presets now. They don't have an EQ, sadly, but they do have presets in the app, and the app works. But what's unique about them for Android listeners like me is they support aptX, so they don't sound so like squashed and watery and MP3 like from the 2000s kind of sounding as some other true wirelesses do. on Android at least, and so that's a big mark for them. They're also, what is it like? I think I got these for like 80 something because they were on sale for Black Friday. This was my Black Friday gift to myself. Um, but they're still pretty shouty. They're definitely a shouty boy of an IEM. But what's really interesting is that I use the Studio preset. If anyone else actually has them, this is a Moondrop, yes. Um, and there's an issue with them. The stock default tuning has this like wide boost over the 5K ish area, which sounds a little weird, and Studio just fixes that. And so they have really decent detail and bass, but they're definitely on the shouty side. But someone doesn't bother me too much. So the only knock against them is that not having noise canceling, even at this price, is becoming less acceptable because this face is just so competitive, true wireless, but it's pretty good.
I have the
But
pink
I,
one.
I, I heard that, yeah. Oh, yeah, you had, it wasn't it purple? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like
Some,
transparent purple? What is this? Are we
so,
bringing back the 2000s? Actually, I
something
think we
like that.
kind of are because what is the cost thing? They did the clear see-through
Oh,
KPH30i. Yeah, so I think
yeah.
that's back in style. See-through plastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, these are definitely harsh for listening to metal. At least if you listen at higher volumes. But
So is there
that's just
any
me.
preset that reduces the upper mid?
There is. I think there's one. It's got some German name. I don't know. And I think the reason why is because I think it's supposed to emulate the Sennheiser IEM sound where there's like
Okay.
no mids. So,
All right.
but it also boosts like it inserts a peak at like 8K that makes no sense and is weird. At least that's what it sounds
Yeah.
like to me. So there is a way to have a V-shaped mids
Hmm.
cut preset, but I wish they would add like I'm like nearly 100% sure that most what are they called, SoC system on chips used for the true wireless stuff now, they all support parametric EQ by now. Like
Yeah, it
why
should.
would a new one not support that?
Yeah.
Just give us the option in the app so everybody can have their own Qdelix 5K true wireless.
That would
Like
be the dream.
that's what we need. That's
Yeah.
what we need. And I think that's kind of, I mean, Olive's gadgets. His earphone free pro mod. There is an app that lets you adjust the parametric EQ built into the chip. But
Yeah.
I want to see that in like
The
other
higher
true
res thing.
wirelesses.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what it says? I am from an initial S company in Germany. Is that the description for the EQ profile I was talking
Initial
about?
S. Hmm.
That's classic. That's classic Moondrop description right there.
So the $1 million question here, though, would be: can you hear a difference between aptX HD and SBC?
Uh, so this is not a fair question because both can sound really good. The issue is somebody when I was complaining about this on Twitter, I forget who it was, but they reminded me that it's not the codec. It's
Hmm.
just that Android uses really bad default bit rates, most likely for most of like SBC and especially AAC. It's not the codec. It's
Right. So you could have
the
good
bit
AAC
rate. It's the
and bad
setting.
AAC.
If you're using um, like some kind of transmitter that you can like set specifically, or you're using probably like Linux where you can probably dive into this settings to force a bit rate or something, that's a whole different world. But on Android, I don't have those options. The only option I have is for LDAC. I can set low, medium, or high or adaptive
Hmm.
bit rate, which is why I like LDAC so much. But it's not necessarily the the codec. However, on Android, my experience has been on multiple phones now. SBC sounds better than AAC, which is
Yeah.
weird and unfortunate because the default, which they call HD audio on Android, which means AAC, actually sounds worse than turning it off. So the default is pretty bad.
Yeah. Um,
If your IEM only supports those two.
I have a random question for you on the BTR5 because I was just evaluating it.
Yeah.
Does the EQ function not work with LDAC?
Yeah, that's correct. They weren't able to get it to work with that. It works with aptX
Yeah.
HD though, which
Yeah.
is good. At least they have that. I really can't tell the difference between aptX HD and LDAC. They're both really, really good.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I didn't have an issue. It was strange. I noticed it because like the other ones could do it. I'm like,
They kept promising that. What's worse is I remember they kept promising with like firmware 2.0 or whatever and beyond they were going to be able to do it, and they didn't initially have it for the original firmware, but they said it was coming, and then they weren't able to do it.
right.
So it's like they didn't talk to the engineers. They just said it was going to be possible.
Yeah.
And then when they finally talked, and they were like, "Oh yeah, no, the chip can't do that." But that doesn't seem right because I feel like that chip was probably used in some other one of those dongle DACs where not dongle, but you know, I mean, Bluetooth DACs, and it does allow it. So I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah. The other thing with those little devices as well is that like they, for the most part, are just as you put it, dongle DACs. They're like Bluetooth dongles. They're not. The only one that isn't is the Audiophile Go Blue actually has some power. Like that one you can actually drive like
Okay.
you know
I
higher
saw it.
impedance.
Is that the one with the crown and everything?
Yeah,
Or is
it
that
has the
something else?
little
That's the one with the crown.
but
I
it doesn't.
like, yeah.
It doesn't have an app, so there's no.
Yeah,
you
Super
know,
reviewed it, and I'm like, what is the point of this? I didn't know that it had more power. Okay.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's
at least
that's the
there's
point.
something there.
It's
Okay.
and it's like meaningfully more power. Like both are the
Okay.
simulated and balanced, whereas the other ones they're like you were talking like a difference between like 200 plus milliwatts versus 80, so it, it matters. I feel like, but again for IEMs or for like conventional headphones, not at all.
Yeah.
So
I'm definitely gonna get a Qdelix now, though.
yep.
That's cool. I don't even have to be tied to a computer to play around with EQ.
Nope. And
gotta
all the
bring your,
shelf funk like filters and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Oh, it has all the types of filters too. Oh,
I'm not sure
yeah,
about all the
crazy.
types, but like it has many
As long as
types.
it's got a low, high shelf and peak, I don't really
Yep.
use anything else. I think
don't either,
EQ
actually.
APO's got like band pass and a bunch of other types.
Yeah. And then
Oh,
you
it
can
has
also
variable shelves with a Q value.
you can
I don't
adjust the
know
Q
if,
value. Yeah.
I don't know if Qdelix has that, but APO does.
Yeah.
I don't really use those though.
Yeah. Guys, we've been going for over 2 hours, so I think unless there's
Yeah.
anything else that Metal wants to get off his chest.
Someone just says, I was shocked how much a jack of all trades the LCD-X is with a little fiddling. That's exactly how I feel about the LCD-2F.
Yeah.
And
I mean, they're
on,
pretty close in price now.
they are. I think the LCD-X is, I mean, it does do a little bit better resolving, I think, in the highs. But it's also a little bit even more too bright above 10K. At least mine is. Man, they're really too bright. Like, it sounds really stupid because everyone's like, Audeze, oh, warm, really warm. But if you look at my LCD2F EQ now, it's got like a 3 or 4 dB cut at 6K, and I think I went to 5 dB cut at like 10.5K now because it's just so much air that is not needed. Especially after listening to the LCD5, I'm like, okay, yeah, no, this is not a
Yeah.
over exaggeration. It is too hot up there. But when you correct all that, it responds really nicely.
I mean, that's kind of the thing that I don't really get is like, how can both of those two things be correct simultaneously? In the sense that if you're trying to achieve a particular kind of sound in both cases, and suppose you have similar goals, I don't understand how both of those, but that's.
Wait, what do you mean? Which?
So the LCD-X in 2021, or just LCD-X in general, and the LCD5, because they're so different, and actually all of Audeze's new tunings.
They're
like
the opposite of
they're
what
the
was
opposite,
there before.
yeah.
They took Seinfeld advice. Do the opposite.
Yeah.
Give
Which is-
all the mids and then get rid of all the excess air. No. Why can't we just do like
Somewhere in the middle would be nice.
Keep the yeah. Don't keep the mids. Boost them like a little bit, like 1 or 2 more dB or something, so that more people don't get angry at it, like me. And then the treble, just get rid of all the peaks there. I know it's easy to say. I'm sure it's not easy to do, but
I just want
it
them
is
to
nice
have.
to know that this chassis.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't just design the chassis and leave it like this. Hopefully, this trickles down to the other
That's what I'm thinking.
designs and the parallel uniforce.
Man, yeah.
Actually, you can see that the traces are parallel to each other. This doesn't look like it has phasers on it though. I'm going crazy. Did they look flat?
Yeah.
Does yours have?
It looks like that, so I don't know.
There's no phasers on the LCD5. Oh, that's a news flash. Everyone's gonna be up in arms now. At least doesn't
I
look like it.
it wasn't something I asked Sankar. I know he said it's still fluxor magnet. So whatever
Fluxor
that.
magnets, but
Yeah,
not phaser. They went without the phasers? Yeah, I don't see any like rounding of the end,
but it could
which is
be.
really obvious on the other stuff, but maybe it
Yeah.
sounds better like that. I don't know.
Who knows what they're doing on the other side? Oh no, because the other it's single sided. So it's,
Oh, it is single sided,
yeah.
but
Oh
the
yeah.
side is towards you? Why?
I
Alright,
know.
anyway.
It is single sided. That's what they
Really
told me. Yeah.
interesting.
But like that's what it is. It's like the trade off is like, so the reason to have it be double sided would be to make that same uniform pistonic movement for the diaphragm, right? And the parallel uniforce in a similar way kind of compensates for not having that second side there. So
Oh, I see.
different way
Yeah,
of
it's
achieving a similar kind of thing.
really surprising that they're able to get that much slam out of a single sided non phaser. Like,
Yeah.
wow.
Anyways,
Anyway, yeah, that's
yeah,
enough.
we should probably cut the stream and
Thanks for tolerating us.
yeah, well actually next weekend is I think Christmas, so we probably skip that one, but
Yeah.
we'll have Blaine on again.
Who are you
Yeah.
gonna have on next? Are you gonna have Kryn so we can talk about Meze?
We do need to have Kryn on. I kind of want to have Kryn on like I want to buy one of his sweatshirts. I want to buy some of his merch.
Nice.
So yeah, I want to have Kryn on. I want to have and we're gonna have Blaine on again at some point for probably the next one if we can. And then I also want to have Oratory on again. I'd love to do that.
Oh, nice.
So we'll see if we can make that happen. But in the meantime, thanks to everybody for hanging out. Thanks for all of your questions. And big thanks to Metal571, of course, for giving us his thoughts on a couple of headphones.
Yep. All right.
Alrighty. We'll see you guys in the next one.
See ya.
Just going to let it run out. We'll see if we can make that happen. But in the meantime, thanks to everybody for hanging out. Thanks for all of your questions.